Hello, hello, everybody. Happy gay! Happy gay! It is the season of the gay. All gay, only gay. If you're not gay,
get out.
Just kidding. Anyway. So, Monday stream, huh? This is new. I almost don't know what to do with myself. Because even earlier I can't even speak. Holy shit. Excellent, Blaze. Do stop the music. Great, swell. Well, we are today doing some chill co-working while we decorate in Spirit City for Pride Month. Because that's kind of a thing that I have been doing on my own. Like y'all can see, it's vaguely spring themed right now, and I do like to adjust accordingly some of the decorations, my character's outfit here and all that, depending on the time of the year. But this is the first Pride Month, I think, since I've had this game. And I want to go all out, more or less. Generally, the decorations here are, we'll call default, basically just the stuff that I like having around. And so, yeah, I think it might be fun, you know, since we're going to be doing like co-working streams and stuff, to kind of like, 'tis the season, this bitch, to match whichever season it may be. In this particular case, it's the gay season. So we go and do that. Yeah, and then afterwards, We might play some Loop Hero if I'm feeling like it. God damn it, I forgot. I always forget closed captions. Sometimes I feel real good when I remember, but then I don't remember, and then I feel bad again. Ah. Mother bitch. Anyway, so yeah, we might do some Loop Hero afterwards. Largely because I am itching to play more. I have been playing some offline, and I want to play more. That's just a bit. I'm gonna do what I want. I'm gonna be fucking selfish. And there we go. Do, 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 do. Do, do, do. I haven't even gotten breakfast yet. I'll need to go grab food at some point. That seems like a future problem. Anyway, so yeah, that's what we're doing today. And for our little watch-along video, we will be watching Nobody is Surprised after we watch the Star Wars video. And I kept yapping about this one, which, in my opinion, I like the Evermore video better, partly because it's something that pertains particularly more to my interests than Star Wars does. But anyway, we're watching Evermore, the theme park that wasn't, by Jenny Nicholson. Y'all please remember to support creators on their channels by watching their videos in their original form, without all this, copyright filter bullshit, without all my yapping in the tiny window and all that stuff. Go support creators, please! Please, please, please. Would very much appreciate it. So yeah, I think we're gonna go ahead and hop into that. And I feel like there's some other stuff I meant to say. I don't know. The schedule's just kind of... I'm trying real hard to keep to a schedule, but as I've yapped about before, it's very fluid right now for a variety of reasons. At some point, I do need to make a phone call. And, schedule more appointment things. But that is a future problem. Anyway, yeah, I want to go ahead and get started with this. We go.
So, in 2014, this booth popped up at Salt Lake City Comic Con announcing a brand new theme park. A fully immersive theme park to rival Disneyland in scale and quality. The theme would combine multiple aesthetics and concepts. Renaissance Fair, Charles Dickens novel, Lord of the Rings, steampunk, Dungeons and Dragons. This park would feature not only typical state-of-the-art theme park rides, but also actors, animatronics, interactive quests, and fully explorable environments. The park would open in 2015. I put that part in quotes because the park would not open in 2015. In fact, that park, as described, would never open. As a big theme park fan, Evermore Park has been an object of curiosity for me from the time of its first announcement, and the story has been a very wild ride since then. So today I would like to explore its fraught history and perhaps go to the park and take a look around. Consider this a very deep dive into Evermore Park. And for your pleasure and convenience, I have organized my points into an easily digestible, numbered list. Oh boy, here comes the list.
I don't know if I even want to start here.
Part 1.
Let's do general first.
So, if you had attended that fateful Salt Lake City Comic Con in 2014, here are some of the Evermore attractions you might have been sold on. A 45-acre park plus 25 acres for parking. A 40,000 square foot manor. An enchanted forest ride. A ride reservation system, so no waiting in lines. A splash pad. A natural amphitheater called The Bowl. Themed costume rentals. A man-made lake. A London-esque city street called Ripper's Cove, which would be used primarily as part of the 5-part haunt.
We're going to have the world's most elaborate haunt. It's a 5-part haunt called Ripper's Cove. And
dancing fountains, an island with ziplining courses, a 250-room hotel, this ominous promise about some kind of amazing bathroom experience, an ice skating rink, a boat ride that takes you through a sunken city, and then you arrive at a 3-story ghost ship. You climb out of the boats, you explore the ghost ship, you climb back in the boats take you through haunted pirate caves, and then you see a giant animatronic sea serpent.
You actually get on boats, that take you around. You go through a sunken city. You go to a 3-story ghost ship.
wow.
You get off the boats.
Kind of like the realism, though.
So one of the things we wanted to do that Disney didn't is Pirates of the Caribbean. You can't go run around and explore.
Or
well,
we
at
can
our
go to
place,
space.
you're
Oh,
going to get
God.
off the boat and you're going to go explore 3 decks of a haunted ghost ship. Then you're going to get back on the boats and you're going to go past Siren Island and you're going to go into a cave. You're going to ride that boat into a cave. There's going to be a sea serpent in there.
Now, I imagine you're hearing this and you're like, that sounds so cool. That sounds like the coolest thing you could ever think of. In fact, it sounds almost exactly like the coolest thing you could think of. It almost sounds like a little kid sat down and daydreamed about their ideal theme park and then impulsively announced that they were building it without planning any of the logistics. In Walt Disney Imagineering, there is a stage in project
this is too much
planning
stimulation
called
for
the
me, but
Blue
just wanted to pop in and say hi.
Charlie!
Hope you're well.
Hi, Charlie. Totally understand the overstimulation. Apologies, but appreciate the sub. I hope you're doing so very swell. Yeah, it's... with the co-working streams, I'm kind of... Jenny talks pretty fast. And then when I start yapping in, and then the sounds from the game and all that, I understand it could be a lot. That's my B. Thank you so much for the 62 months, Charlie. You're such a gem, and I appreciate the shit out of you. Thank you. Ow, I just bumped my knee. I'm gonna blame you for that, Charlie. It's all your fault. How could you do this to me? Works for some people. I can't even read and listen to things at the same time. Yeah, I get that. I was just talking to my stepmother-in-law because I'm trying to read more books, but like oftentimes as I'm reading, my ADHD kicks in and like my eyes continue moving down the page, but like I'm not absorbing any of the words. And so then I have to like snap myself out of it and go back and be like, oh, I gotta reread what I just read. And so then there's times where like combine that with also putting on like a show or something, which I do sometimes for some reason. I don't know why. I think I can manage that. It's just my attention going every which way, and it becomes a little bit of a mess. Anyway, we continue. It's very ADHD.
Sky stage. This is the stage in the creative process wherein Imagineers will pitch the most ambitious ideas they can think of. There's no thought toward money or technology or even physics. It's just like pitch what you...
See, I can't do audiobooks because my attention drifts worse with audiobooks. Like, if I have a physical book in my hand, or even if it's like an ebook, then I have to keep my eyes locked on the words. But if I'm just listening to something, it's too easy for my mind to drift. But that's just me. Audiobooks work for some people. Ben does better with audiobooks than I do. He doesn't like print books. Depends on the narrator for me. Oh yeah. I had an experience recently. I was trying to listen to an audiobook on Murder at the Vicarage by Agatha Christie. I'm getting into more mystery books lately. And the guy is just so, like, no offense to the narrator, but he's like that teacher that would drone and make you fall asleep in class. Like, hold on, we're going on a side tangent right now. Hold on now. Look what you did, Charlie. Look what you did. Everything is your fault today, Charlie. Okay. Okay, can I play a sample of this? Do they have a sample? You know, fuck it, I'm just gonna borrow it again. Because I literally got like 10 minutes into this, and I couldn't finish it. Okay, I'm not gonna play a ton of this, because obviously that would be exceedingly copyright infringing. But...
The Murder at the Vicarage, a Miss Marple mystery. Written by Agatha Christie. Read for you by Andrew Walsh.
Andrew Walsh, I'm so sorry, my guy. Your voice, literally, as I was listening to this, like, he unironically sounds like an AI voice. Yeah, exactly. He sounds like an AI. Like, I'm so sorry, my dude, but, like, what? Like, hold on.
1.
We'll just listen to
It is difficult to know quite where to begin this story, but I have fixed my choice on a certain Wednesday at luncheon at the vicarage. The conversation, though in the main irrelevant to the matter in hand...
Yeah, so, I was listening to this. I got 10 minutes in before I had to bow out. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna find this book in some form elsewhere. Because I've been mostly consuming my literature these days through library apps like Libby and Hoopla, like where you link your library card and you like borrow books and audiobooks and stuff. This is what AI train on. Oh god. Again, fucking the Andrew Walsh reader. I'm sure you're a great guy, but yeah. Look at you with the fancy library card. I know. Only had to live here like fucking 2 years before I got one. Yeesh. Anyway, so yeah, that's my side tangent. I don't do very well with audiobooks. Literally, the only time I've ever managed with an audiobook was when Ben had me listen to Wool by Hugh Howey. As you know, the book that the Silo series on Apple TV was based on. And like literally, we just laid there staring at the ceiling, no distractions of any kind, which I can't really do during the day, but that's the only way I was able to get through it. And even then I was occasionally like, hey, could you like back up a little bit? I kind of wasn't listening for the past like 2 minutes. Yeesh. We're all just doing our best.
Who think would be the coolest, and we'll see what resonates with the team. The blue sky phase is one of the earliest stages in planning. In the often years that follow, the upper management and the Imagineers decide what's actually realistically within budget, what's possible to build, and what's a priority. And then they go ahead and announce to the public all of the things that they're actually going to have. But of course, at the time of the Evermore announcement, the park's opening was only a year away. They were presumably well past the blue sky stage. In fact, in their behind-the-scenes videos, you could see that they had already hired a lot of the staff. Notably, even a team of special effects makeup artists who wouldn't even be needed until the park opened. And yet, at the time of the park's big announcement, many couldn't help but notice that they hadn't even broken ground on the construction site. The major news outlets that reported on it just kind of took it at face value and didn't go into much detail. They were just kind of like, it sounds like a new theme park's coming to Utah. Sounds great. But if you look at like theme park fan blogs from around this time, you can see that there's a healthy dose of skepticism already going around. Some questioned the park's creative team directly, but were told that there was nothing to worry about. The park was just going to open in phases. So like, yeah, it sounds ambitious, but not everything's going to be their opening day. The first phase of construction would only include the London Street, the town square, and that aforementioned 3-story ghost ship pirate boat ride with the giant animatronic sea serpent. A much more attainable goal, no? Well, no. There were those that still had their doubts. But the Evermore team insisted they were right on track. Part 2, The Inventor. When I heard about the project, one of my first questions was, who's behind this? Usually when you hear about a new theme park, there's some kind of giant, recognizable corporation behind it. If you hear they're building another Disneyland or another Six Flags, that makes some level of sense. Even some new production company throwing their hat in the ring checks out, like if suddenly Nickelodeon is building a theme park. But when you hear there's going to be a new elaborate theme park in Utah, and it's being built by some guy, it's a little more mysterious. So let's explore some guy. Ken Bretschneider is a 50-something who made his fortune in tech. He founded a company called DigiCert, which specializes in digital security. You know when you visit a website that handles
Think of with a
sensitive
rainbow for an
information like
accent
your
wall, like
insurance
on the
provider
sides
or your
there.
bank, your browser displays that little lock icon next to the URL so you know you're at the real page and you're not being phished for your password or anything else like that. That third-party company is paid to provide this service, and there are 2 or 3 of these companies that you see around a lot. Like, let's look
I
at
should have been doing
Facebook.
this in
If
tab
you mouse
2.
over
Oh,
the
no,
lock
I'm
icon,
bad and
verified by DigiCert. Twitter, verified by DigiCert. Tumblr, verified by DigiCert. Thank God they're keeping my romantic gifts of Sherlock safe. So in 2002, Brett Schneider founded DigiCert. It did super well, and then he sold off his portion for like a whole lot of money. I wasn't able to find a definitive number that he made from this sale. I've seen guesses in the tens of millions and guesses in the hundreds of millions. Some of these guesses are stated very assertively, but I think basically nobody knows the exact number except
there we
him.
go.
Anyway,
That's
the relevant information is that his foray into tech made him very rich. So subsequently with that money, he did a lot of other weird projects. In 2010, he founded Deep Studios, a film production company. They made a handful of indie films, the most famous probably being 2013's Skinwalker Ranch, a found footage horror movie. In 2012, he became the CEO of a company called People Water. It was a bottled water company founded by a former Bachelorette contestant. Their website is defunct, and I couldn't find any reports about the company after 2015, so I think they went out of business. In 2013, he started a record label called Hidden Records, which I guess was like a sub-distribution label under Red Distribution, which no longer exists. I could only find concrete evidence of Hidden Records ever actually signing one band, and that band re-signed to a different label in 2015, so I think Hidden Records no longer exists either. In 2014, Brett Schneider co-founded a barcade in Sherman Oaks called The One Up. That one still exists, and it's got 4 stars on Yelp. I think it's doing okay. 2014 also brought the announcement of a new project called The Air Center. This would have been in downtown Salt Lake City and combined a hotel, restaurant, nightclub. This would never be built, and the plot of land would go up for sale in 2016.
The first thing we've seen while we're here.
I would be remiss not to mention another, and maybe the most important Brett Schneider project, his annual tradition of decorating his family home every Halloween. For years, he would transform his property into grander and grander haunted houses, and not for money or anything, just like a festive thing for the neighborhood to enjoy. In 2013, the haunt saw over 11,000 guests, and Brett Schneider only requested that attendees bring a donation of cash or food for the Utah Food Bank. This made him something of a neighborhood legend, so when the news of the theme park first broke, there were a lot of locals in his corner. The narrative as a whole looked pretty good. A creatively minded hometown hero. He made his millions in tech, but he poured it back into his creative endeavors.
That's why I can't do my own things. I'm so indecisive.
He was a jack of all trades, a lifelong enthusiast in showmanship and theme parks, and now he was going to turn Utah into a world-class destination. I mean, honestly, what could possibly go wrong? Part 3, The Void. In May of 2015, it was announced that the Evermore project was indefinitely on hold, but that's actually not why this section is called The Void. The good news was that while Evermore was on the back burner, Brett Schneider would be focusing his energies on a new business venture. He co-founded a new entertainment company called The Void, which stood for The Vision of Infinite Dimensions. The Void was basically a chain of virtual reality attractions. You would put on a helmet and a big heavy vest and walk into a maze of essentially plain gray office cubicles. A pre-programmed adventure would then play out in your goggles, leading you through basically a first-person shooter video game. The 3D space you're in and all physical objects in it were already mapped out in the game. So any place you saw a wall in your goggles, there would actually be a wall. Whenever a door opened in the game, an automatic door would open to let you out of your cubicle into the next zone. And obviously, instead of plain gray cubicles, your goggles were showing you the halls of an enemy space station or a haunted castle. Virtual enemies would shoot at you, and if they hit you, a corresponding area on your vest would vibrate unpleasantly. And there were a bunch of other little parlor tricks which made a huge difference. Like if you walked across moss or alien slime, there was a corresponding squishy foam patch on the ground, so you could actually feel like you were in that environment. If your character had to walk out across a narrow bridge, they've laid down metal grating in that area, so you feel like you're really walking across it and you can hear it. If in the game you were up on a high balcony, there were upward pointed pipes in the room that would blast air in your face or heat if you were next to lava. Sometimes entire cubicles even vibrated a little bit to simulate traveling on an escape pod or an elevator. Each individual element sounds like a small touch, but all of it put together made for a pretty immersive experience, and soon enough there were different locations popping up everywhere. And I mean, it makes sense. This is a concept that's basically built for franchising. It needed relatively little space, so you could put it into a vacant store in a shopping mall. And once built, the same maze of cubicles can be rearranged and repurposed again and again by just applying new digital visuals and then sending customers down different routes. And to sweeten the deal, the Void started licensing familiar properties to make different iterations of the game. So instead of just being essentially a public domain arcade game with a haunted castle, the Void suddenly had the legitimacy of being like a Ghostbusters experience, a Jumanji experience. The Walt Disney Company also saw a lot of promise in the concept and signed an ongoing deal for use of several of their properties. So we saw a Wreck-It Ralph game, an Avengers game, a Star Wars game based on Rogue One. Disney also personally rented out space for 2 different Void attractions at Disney Springs and Downtown Disney. These are basically the shopping districts that are next to the parks on both coasts. Different locations offered different games which could be switched out periodically. The games only lasted about 15 minutes, but they could charge $30 to $40 a person, and the games would often book out fully in advance. I imagine that the initial investment in equipment could be quite expensive, and the setup costs of a given location. But once you had all that done and let enough time elapse to gobble up those initial costs, it seems to me like you could just kind of sit back and watch your money print itself. Personally, I went through a few of the Void programs and I really liked them. I thought the whole thing was really well executed, and all those little parlor tricks I mentioned really did make you feel more like you were in the world once you had the helmet on. And yet I, and many others, considered this a bittersweet development. VR is pretty fun, but it's totally different from a tangibly real fantasy village. If I may be subjective, VR just isn't as cool, and probably won't be for at least 100 years,
Jetty.
or whenever they start putting implants in our brains. But there was cause for
Jetty.
cautious
You don't know what you're
optimism
talking
because
about.
the Void's success could be good news for Evermore.
You're just a
Firstly,
hater.
one imagines that any profit Brett Schneider made off Void would eventually be routed back into Evermore's budget. Secondly, there was talk of a Void location being installed at Evermore. To be honest, the promises in this regard were inconsistent. Sometimes it seems like the plan is for a Void location to be inside of Evermore. Sometimes the goal is to build a 7 to 8 pod virtual reality center next to the park, enclosed in a giant dome. At other times, it seems that this VR center will be in Salt Lake City, perhaps as part
They
of
got
the
the
Air
newest
Center
Oculus.
project. In fact, in some
haven't used
articles,
it in
the
a
Air
while,
Center is
though.
rebranded as the Void VR Corporate Center, which will feature both office space and public entertainment venues. As I've said, the Air Center would remain a beautiful vacant lot. But let's check in on our other favorite vacant lot, Evermore Park. Part 4, the land. So in the Void era, Evermore had been indefinitely delayed. The announcement said it was due to financial difficulties, and that's the only official reason that the park is ever given, but I at least need to mention another element. There are a lot of rumors regarding the location chosen for Evermore. The 2014 announcement said that the park would be
can't get
coming to
multicolor
Pleasant
lights?
Grove, Utah, and the land necessary was
What do you
purchased.
mean?
But I'm guessing a lot of you
How
are not
homophobic.
familiar with this place. Pleasant Grove is a small and sparse city, mostly comprised of suburbs. And honestly, the parts of it that I saw were like 85% office park. This choice honestly feels extremely reminiscent of the strategy that the Disney parks used when they were scouting locations. When Disney bought the property for Disneyland, Anaheim was like all orange groves. It was drivably near to Los Angeles, so tourists could still head that way, but the land was cheap and there was
Oh, dear
lots of
God.
room to expand. The city of Anaheim, as we know it now, really became that way in response to the success of Disneyland and the tourism industry that sprang up around it. So, in a similar spirit, Pleasant Grove is about a 40-minute drive from Salt Lake City. I wouldn't necessarily call Salt Lake a huge tourism city, but it's at least a population center and people can drive from there to your park. A nearer neighbor is Provo, which is a relatively humble college town about 20 minutes from Pleasant Grove.
Okay, show me the beautiful Provo view. I was like a Tim Burton guy like that. It's so gross. Oh my god. Oh my god. What do you? It's on the window. It's like sludge. It's drool from balconies on the higher floor. It's literally just like brownish sludge.
The key word
Blech.
here being humble, which honestly could work in Evermore's favor.
appreciate that
After
they
all,
have
there are a
different
lot of young
flags.
people here, and not a whole lot for them to do on weekends other than go to a couple outlet malls or maybe do an escape room. But although this seems like an advantageous location, there was another factor to consider. If you moved your family into what you thought was a quiet suburb with good schools, you might be less than thrilled to hear that a theme park to rival Disneyland is going in next door. Disneyland may have put Anaheim
to
on the
turn off the
map, but it also
cicadas.
moved in a whole tacky subculture of gift shops, fast food, budget motels, not to mention traffic through the whole center of town, light pollution, sound pollution in the busy season when they have fireworks spectaculars every single night. And outside of Florida and California, people's cultural idea of a big theme park is even less flattering. Think of all those humbler operations like Six Flags and Cedar Fair, big hot expanses of cracked concrete and towering ugly steel roller coaster tracks that you can see from miles away. It's perfectly natural to feel skeptical as a local homeowner, no matter how much pretty concept art you're shown. So, allegedly, the hostility to the announcement by the people of Pleasant Grove was part of the reason for a reimagining of Evermore Park. And insiders also allege that every time Evermore needed to clear any kind of permit with Town Hall, it was a huge contentious battle. And so, in this alleged effort to appease the locals, we see a brief shift in 2017. For a time, Evermore Park was instead running with the project name Evermore Gardens. Now the park is hardly a theme park at all. We are told that there will be absolutely no rides. Evermore Gardens will be a themed botanical garden. The park may host a Void VR attraction in one of the buildings on property, but for the most part it will be about atmosphere. The gardens will be divided into 4 zones: English Garden, Victorian Garden, Celtic Garden, and Fantasy Garden. Sounds pretty cool. Unfortunately, this concept is problematic for a few reasons. Firstly, it makes the project essentially unrecognizable from what it was pitched as, but more crucially, it's not even a great business decision. While in Pleasant Grove, I discovered that there is a big tourist hub about 10 miles down the road called Thanksgiving Point. It's a shopping and dining district with a couple science museums, a big golf course, lots of rental homes, and a gigantic botanical garden. I only took a cursory look at the place on my last day in town, but it's free to enter and sprawls over 50 acres. It has a greenhouse, man-made waterfalls, and it hosts book clubs and children's fairy tale meetups. So what I'm trying to say is that opening a much smaller, paid entry botanical garden about 15 minutes down the road sounds extremely foolish. And maybe they realized that because the Evermore Gardens angle didn't last long. But anyway, at this point in time, it was just nice to see that the project hadn't been entirely abandoned. Part 5, The Return of Evermore. Finally, in February of 2017, Evermore returns fully from the mists of obscurity.
Could I just say, first off, I mean, obviously I don't know what the fuck I'm doing with any of this anywhere. But, like, I'm kind of just trying to go based on vibes. And maybe my vibe right now is purple bricks for the side walls. That might just be the vibe. Is it a design nightmare? Maybe. Do I care? Not really. Anyway.
Suddenly, Brett Schneider announces on the local news that the plans are back on, and not for Evermore Gardens, for Evermore Park.
Central Utah specialist Sam Penrod is live on the site tonight. Sam, it looks like this is going to happen.
Yes, Dave, the Evermore Park project seemed to stall over the past couple of years, but we're told construction is set to begin here later this week, and what the founder believes will become a big entertainment attraction here in Utah.
Evermore would now be opening as an 11-acre park, still with no rides or attractions. This was spun as a selling point. Evermore was now less a theme park and more a botanical garden experience park. The main activity would now be immersive, interactive quests led by a Broadway-sized cast of character actors. So now we have a little bit of a middle ground. Definitely cooler than a botanical garden, but definitely less cool than a theme park to rival Disneyland. But don't worry, the park wouldn't just be a simple Renaissance fair, it would be using world-class, state-of-the-art effects to elevate these interactive performances.
These are immersive theatrical experiences, so we're using lighting, DMX controlled devices, smells, sounds, sights. We're using 3D projection mapping, costuming, puppeteering, and different things to create these really elaborate events.
And don't forget about that Void VR location going into the park. Maybe it'll even be under a dome. This reopening announcement was similar to the one from that 2014 Comic-Con in that at the time of the announcement, the park was slated to open only a year later, in Halloween of 2018. But unlike the Comic-Con announcement, this time they would meet their deadline. Kind of. In my opinion, one of Evermore's first and worst missteps is that it opened long before it was ready to. This is kind of like that Spider-Man Broadway musical situation. You can open a half-finished project and call it a preview and a soft opening as much as you want, but when you're making a commercial product, that doesn't really matter. Anyone who was going to show up and write a review or an article about your product is going to show up the moment that it opens to the public and review it then, regardless of the state that it's in. And if you're not putting your best foot forward, you're just going to squander all that free publicity only to potentially put out an underwhelming first impression. So Evermore Park opened on September 22nd, 2018, and they called it a soft opening. I have to imagine this was for financial reasons. A half-finished park with a lowered ticket price is still at least bringing in some money, and you can put that toward finishing the project if you run out of funds. I do think that opening at Halloween time was a great idea. As I've said, Halloween decorations were Brett Schneider's specialty, plus they would put a more flattering veneer over the entire park. After all, unless you live in a rural area, you've probably been to a pumpkin patch that's really just a parking lot, and they've dressed it up with hay bales and scattered loose sawdust on the ground and put a bunch of pumpkins everywhere, and suddenly you're in an autumnal wonderland. It turns out that American brains really just love to look at like loads of pumpkins. That's literally all it takes for us. Evermore employed a lot of similar techniques. The empty landscaping didn't look empty because it was loaded with pumpkins. Straw could be used to camouflage incomplete features, and everything else could be literally smoke screened with strategically placed fog machines. Initial customer feedback was generally pretty positive. The buildings they could see were beautiful. Yeah, most of them were still locked up, and yeah, the park had a lot of chain link fences everywhere, half-finished buildings, and visible construction sites. Clearly it wasn't done. The park opened with bare minimum food offerings, although they promised to have more complex options later. They had no liquor license, so although one of the interactive locations was a tavern, nothing was served there. There were some other small quibbles in the initial reviews. The interactive element that was promised was very confusing to many visitors. There was no clear signage or instruction, and the actors didn't volunteer information about the quests unless you already knew how to ask about them.
I think this is the tavern, and we have to ask for like a quest.
Go ask him.
Ethan, you ask him for a quest.
Film me.
Quest? What? Like slaying a dragon and saving a princess, like that kind of quest.
Yeah. That sounds like fairy tales to me.
It does.
But there were other activities like archery and some scare maze elements that could entertain teenagers just looking for Halloween thrills. Many guests were content just doing a little archery, taking in the scenery, making awkward small talk with some actors, and then heading home early. At least in terms of the online feedback I could find, most of it was pretty encouraging.
There's a lot that's not finished, but it's really cool already.
They're still under construction, so we weren't able to see everything. But what has been done was amazing.
Right now, it feels a little more like a Renaissance fair and a dress rehearsal for what's to come.
Very incomplete things.
Yeah, it's good to get in here and kind of get a feel for what to expect when you come.
So I think it's a work in progress right now, but I was glad I got a quick sneak peek, and I feel like you guys are gonna love it.
They still actually have a lot of construction and work to do. I took that in mind going into this. I look forward to going back in about a month when I feel like everything's gonna be more completed.
The park wasn't done, but they'll be adding a lot in the coming years. It'll be really cool then. This verdict from the locals meant that people would not be coming from out of town to check it out because it just didn't sound worth it, which honestly probably greatly diminished the potential customer base. It seemed that at this point, what little hold Evermore had ever had over the minds of the general public slipped away for good, their curiosity satisfied. But the important thing was that the park had actually opened, an obstacle which in previous years had seemed insurmountable, and it could only get better from here. Part 6. Lore. From the start, Evermore was always intended to operate seasonally with different themes throughout. It would close for weeks to months in between so that the park could be redecorated, and presumably so actors could be briefed on the new storylines. There is a canonical explanation for this. Evermore is meant to be a town removed from time, a liminal space surrounded by portals to many different realms and times. This means that, aesthetically, Evermore can borrow elements from multiple fantasy genres and time periods. So they can have a medieval village, a Victorian cathedral, a quaint fairy tale cottage, a hobbit house. They even have steampunk stuff. When the park opened, it had this automaton named Tip Top who would stomp around and thump on his stomach in delight. Evermore has some residents who have canonically made their home in this town, and other characters are just passing through. You, the guest, are yourself visiting through a portal from modern day Earth, so even that works in canon. And the citizens of Evermore call the guests from Earth the World Walkers. So that's you, you're a World Walker. In each season of operation, new portals open to let in new creatures from different worlds. So in the wintertime, maybe a portal opens to a world of whimsical snow fairies. At Halloween time, maybe a portal has let in a sinister Fae King who's trying to take over. Each season has its own general overarching story, and I'm told by fans who have a more intimate knowledge of the lore that the time setting will also change between seasons. So you might go to the past of a previous season and see different characters, or you might jump into the future on the timeline. To help keep it straight, every season has a different name. As of now, a spring season has never come to pass, but the park leadership have expressed interest in doing an operating season at that time of year. It's just never happened. The summer season is called Mythos. This was pitched as a magical midsummer lantern festival celebrating fairies, dragons, and other forms of magic. The concept art shows a massive illuminated dragon winding through town and jellyfish hanging from the trees. One year, the summer event was called Pyra, or maybe Pyrrha. It was pirate themed, but then the following year, the summer event was called Mythos again. Lore is the Halloween event. So you see, when I called this section lore, it was actually some very clever meta humor. You didn't know it at the time, but you may laugh now that I told you. Well, that's probably long enough. Anyway, lore has two different phases. At the earlier part of the day, it's a more child-friendly Halloween event where kids can trick-or-treat for taffy from the characters and look at big pumpkins. Then as the sun goes down, it starts to get spookier and converts into a more sinister and jump scare-based experience, closer to what you might find at Universal Studios Halloween Horror Nights or other scare mazes like that. All information I could find indicated that these two time periods were not separately ticketed, which I honestly find very strange because demographically they seem like two very different experiences. I'm sure some people, like myself for example, would love to go and do both, but maybe they could have utilized like a colored wristband system in order to sell cheaper half-time tickets to the people that don't want to stay all night. Aurora is the winter event, and more specifically the Christmas event. This part of Utah is overwhelmingly Mormon, so there's little motivation for businesses in this area to have secular winter activities. During Aurora, the park hosts an interactive version of A Christmas Carol, wherein you can follow the characters around.
Girl, hey. Hello? Get off your ass, girly pop. Oh no. Hold up. Hello? Hello? Jesus Christ. Okay, we gotta reload this bitch. This is what I get for getting up for fucking 2 seconds. Okay, it's fine. It's fine. I just got a breakfast sandwich. Man. I haven't even gone for that long. Okay, there we go. Jesus balls. Are we fine now? Okay, we go.
Around if you wish. In San Francisco, there's an annual event called the Dickens Fair, so Aurora sounds like a slightly less elaborate version of that. But they have fantasy characters out too for people who want the more typical Evermore experience. The park announced that in January of 2021, the Christmas Aurora operations would make way for the winter but not Christmas themed event Vinterloom. It seemed that this event would have been more about ice, snow, magic, the northern lights, etc. But I'm afraid Vinterloom would never come to be. Oh my god, I forgot my gamer lights. Were they on? Yes, they were on in the other clips. Turn on gamer lights. Yay! Although the seasonal names for the most part repeat each year, one lore is not the same as every other lore. So it's not like if you go one year at Halloween, you have no reason to return for the following Halloween, because it will be a different experience. To be honest, I feel like the naming conventions don't make this clear enough. Especially when one random summer had a different name, I could imagine unfamiliar guests just assuming that two mythoses are the same as each other. Also, if I may be subjective, I dislike most of these names. Lore doesn't evoke the vibe of a kid-friendly pumpkin patch or a teen-friendly Fright Fest, so I imagine both demographics might just overlook it entirely. Aurora doesn't evoke the idea of a Charles Dickens Christmas Carol. Mythos is fine, but if you put the word mythos on a billboard, nobody's gonna know what it is. In my opinion, until your local customer base has the faintest idea what your park is, you need to promote extremely basic season names that spell it out for them. This summer is Fairy Fest at Evermore. Come see the Summer of Dragons, Christmas Village, Winter Masquerade, Pumpkin Town, Ever Fear. It's cool to have this story about different portals opening to different realms, and it makes sense for those portals to all have their own names, but maybe those names should just be a part of in-game dialogue and literature, and then the superfans can learn them if they'd like. But the words mean nothing to a non-fan, so they should not be used in marketing, at least until the park gets enough of a foothold that locals do know these words, and then it'll mean something to some rando that's driving past a billboard. Anyway, each season had its own totally unique storyline. There would be a unique threat to the safety of the town, or an object that all the guilds are trying to get, or various characters would be running for mayor. And in some cases, the stakes were pretty high. Like, they would have wizard battles, characters could even be killed off, and then the actor would just be recast in a different role. There are a handful of dedicated locals who try to chronicle all of these story developments, either through text in Discord servers, or through capturing footage of as many major story beats as they can find. I can see that a fan wiki has been created, but nearly all of the pages are still blank templates, although I did stumble across some kind of intense Google Doc shared by the mods. Apparently, in past seasons of Evermore, the park would hand out an ever-changing newspaper summarizing what guests had missed. This is a good enough concept, although I question how useful some of this information would be to an average guest. But honestly, I wonder why there isn't more of an online guide being maintained by the park. You'd think they could put character profiles up on the website, or at least summarize the major story arcs so people considering whether or not to go can know what they're getting into. I have heard from former employees that at one time characters shot little introductory videos. The idea being that when guests bought tickets digitally, they would then be emailed a randomized video so they could at least get to know one character before they showed up. And then there's kind of a connection, like if they see that character in the park, it's like, oh, I know this guy! But for whatever reason, that system was never implemented, and these alleged videos remain unreleased. I'd think it would at least behoove them to put that kind of content on the official YouTube channel. I do also, if we're being honest, find the story pacing a little odd. It seems like a little too much of the experience depends on being at the right place at the right time on the right date. In theory, this could be a good thing in that all guests would have a unique experience. But all guests having a unique experience is only really cool if each of those experiences is roughly equivalent in quality. As it stands now, it seems like you can either come on the right night when there's a wizard battle throwing fireballs back and forth, or the wrong night where nothing exciting happens at all. I already expressed my intent to go to the park, right? So I wonder which kind of night I will experience. It seems like a large portion of the clientele are families who are only visiting once and may never return, so it feels important to make sure that every night has some kind of standout moment. The closest equivalent theme park experience I can think of is the Ghost Town Alive event at Knott's Berry Farm. For a couple summers, the park would staff actors to live in the park's cowboy town. They would similarly interact with guests, give them tasks, and convey major story beats with a newspaper. Well, yeehaw! I have it right here. I keep it in my big binder of theme park maps. A normal thing to have. A big difference is in Ghost Town Alive,
Jenny, you're
the
doing
actors
great.
are canonically meant to be
I have a mouthful of
ghosts.
breakfast
They don't know that
sandwich.
they're ghosts,
Sorry.
but that's what they are, and they're stuck in like a ghost time loop. That's why every day of the event is Founders Day. Every day the townsfolk are electing a sheriff and trying to stop the same group of bandits. Every day has a gunfight at the same time, and every day has a celebratory Founders Day hoedown. And your little errands can influence the story, so different days have different outcomes for various characters. And then there were a couple several random days that were made special for the guests. Like, instead of walking in for the climactic confrontation, the bandits would ride in on the park's real steam train. But if you weren't there on that particular day, it wouldn't feel like you had had a lesser experience. You can go on any given day and both see the ramifications of the things you've done with the characters and feel like you've seen all the major beats of a story. There's one night of Evermore's story that's widely talked about on the fan groups. Most people refer to it as the night Evermore went dark. This was a night during lore, so there had been dark creatures threatening Evermore through all of the storyline, but it had finally come to a head. So on this one night, about a half hour before closing time, the creatures all rushed the town, storming into once safe areas. The characters all started screaming and running, hurrying guests out of the park, back out through the portal they had entered from, so the front gate. And then once all the guests were outside, the gates were closed. Frequent visitors were thrilled to be there on a night that something exciting had happened. But first-time guests were, in some cases, confused and angry. Supposedly, complaints from some guests prompted management to reopen the gates because they couldn't just close the park early, but when they did reopen, it was to an eerily empty town. This left a cool mystery for the following week. What had happened to everybody? Would they be okay? Again, a tantalizing story for guests who already knew they were returning next week, but kind of a frustrating and confusing end of the night for one-time visitors who had no idea what was going on. I also think it's worth noting that story beats of that intensity, which are unprecedented and happen without prior warning, are possibly an unwise choice for a family park. It seems
Yeah, we heard a bit about that in the fucking words are hard. In the Star Wars video when she talked about, yeah. This is specifically what she was referring to. Yeah.
that a lot of parents, whether they're supposed to or not, do let their kids roam unsupervised within the park, and this is not discouraged by park management. So if everyone is suddenly booted outside, I could see that being a real safety issue. Also, it might have occurred to you that hanging out in a crowded venue and suddenly having everybody screaming and running and telling you to get out, and you don't know why, might evoke imagery of real disasters and acts of mass violence which have happened at real entertainment venues. So I can imagine being quite alarmed if you're at the park for the first time and happen to not know the minutia about the B-plot brewing with the Fae King and his evil minions. Anyway, moving on to another story element, we have guilds. Different characters in the park belong to different guilds, which guests can help through quests or even join. These are roughly similar to the character classes in Dungeons & Dragons. I tried really hard to find a definitive list somewhere of all the guilds, but it's pretty confusing. Evermore doesn't really maintain their own guide, and guilds also seem to be introduced and then eliminated throughout different seasons. But anyway, here's the list that I've got. The Knights, the Rangers and Archery Guild, the Pirates, the Dwarves. These guys mostly just play covers of popular music. The Blackheart Hunters. These are the most unique guild. They're basically like a group of Van Helsing-style monster hunters. Old seasons appear to have had a Bards Guild, but I think they no longer exist. At least one season had a guild called the Wolves of Winter. My impression is that this was sort of like a barbarian guild.
Complete these 2 trials, and one final one the following week, and you will be part of the pack.
I think they don't exist anymore either. There are elves, but I don't think they're a guild, and some characters called the Rangers the Elven Rangers, but none of the Rangers that I saw seemed to be elves. It seemed like they were 2 different groups, so I don't know what to make of that. The Dragon Riders, in previous seasons called the Dragon Trainers. There are fairies, and some guests say they've been given quests to join the Fairies Guild, but this might have been improvised by the actors. It doesn't seem like this was a guild that was ever recognized by the park. Unclear. There appears to be one wizard just kicking around, one guy, so I think that's not a guild. And lastly, I heard there were witches, but it seems that there aren't anymore. And that's all of them that I'm aware of. Again, would love some kind of guide or glossary curated by the park. I did my very best. It seems that in some storylines, the guilds are at odds with one another, and in others they're just coexisting without incident. I think for the most part this is meant to function like the Hogwarts houses, like it's just kind of fun to belong to a club. And now I think you've got the basics. You've at least got what I knew going in. So from there, the story of Evermore was ever changing, ever evolving with each season. And you're probably wondering what else changed. The answer is not much. Yeah, remember at opening, all those people that were saying they were excited to see Evermore when it was more finished? Just as soon as management had gotten through what they called Phase 2 of construction, well, Phase 2 never seemed to come. Some of those unsightly chain link fences around construction sites came down, but not because construction was finished. The unfinished buildings were just out in plain sight, the paths to them usually blocked off by sawhorses. There were some uncompleted buildings that just needed their interiors finished, so a couple of those were polished up and open to guests. A miniature train ride was installed to circle the park, and they opened up an affiliated themed restaurant just outside the gates. The plants began to grow in and give the park a more filled-in look, but it seemed that the buildings that were incomplete at the park's grand opening would stay that way. Part 7, Plague Comes to Evermore. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but in 2020, the US was hit by something called the coronavirus pandemic, forcing a lot of people to stay inside and some businesses to close indefinitely. Many chain restaurants were able to weather the storm of the pandemic, but it was a killing blow to a lot of independent businesses. I can only imagine the kind of setback it would be for a newly opened theme park still trying to recoup its construction costs. This was also a crushing blow to Void VR. Virtual reality experiences are not an essential service, so unsurprisingly, locations were required to close. Surprisingly, for much of the pandemic, Disney's 2 theme park adjacent shopping districts did stay open for shopping and outdoor dining, but the VR experience entailed walking through narrow cubicles, touching things, and oh yeah, wearing an enclosed helmet on your entire head that other people have been wearing and breathing on all day. Even if they had been legally allowed to operate, I can't think of any number of bleach wipes that would make people want to take on that activity in a pandemic. So even as its neighboring shops were open to customers and foot traffic, the 2 Disney Void locations would remain shuttered. And oh, it gets worse. The Void fell behind on rent payments, but more painfully, they fell behind on licensing payments to the Walt Disney Company. Out of all of Brett Schneider's ventures at the time, the Void had always seemed like the most robust and the safest bet. But now, with the unexpected obstacle of the pandemic, the Void was struggling, and things were looking grim all around. So let's look at our timeline as best as I can pin it down. June 2020, Utah Business reports that Evermore Park faces 5 separate lawsuits from unpaid contractors, each owed between $28,000 and $400,000. July 2020, Disney posts a notice of eviction and a termination notice of the licensing agreement on the windows of the Downtown Disney Void location. Since the shopping districts are open to the public, these legal letters are immediately photographed and posted online for speculation and ridicule. August 2020, the last update to the Void website appears. It notifies customers that locations will remain closed indefinitely. Guests with pre-booked tickets are refused refunds. Instead, they are instructed to rebook and promised a free credit for an additional experience. That same month, Evermore Park launches a GoFundMe to try to rescue the park. If you read far enough to see what the funds would be used for, it mentions things like developing new merchandise, building new structures on the property, launching a podcast? Guys, what do you think it costs to launch a podcast? I mean, yes, that could help with publicity, so like, why not? But you could have done that at any time, and you don't need $100,000 from your fans to get it started. And I'm not an accountant, but doesn't it seem like any funds raised ought to be paying those outstanding debts to contractors first? October 2020, the Void signage is completely dismantled from both Disney locations. Meanwhile, the Vegas location is taken over by a competitor. January 2021, the Void website goes completely offline. Meanwhile, Evermore announces that the park will be abruptly laying off a huge chunk of their staff.
A fantasy fiction theme park here in Utah has notified employees they're no longer needed. The owner of Evermore in Pleasant Grove telling Fox 13 after the pandemic forced the park's closure for nearly 4 months earlier last year and limited audiences ever since. They've lost upwards of $1 million.
The layoffs consist of the bulk of the interactive character performers, leaving only a theoretical skeleton crew to operate food service and some of the extra activities. I say theoretical because after the conclusion of the winter experience, Evermore does not reopen for January, February, March, or April.
I do really
Park
like
officials claim that the closure is not permanent, that they would reopen sometime in the coming
very
months,
nice
and that
touch.
when they did reopen, they would move in a new direction without actors. You're probably wondering, what new direction? The pandemic saw many theme parks scaling down or phasing out interactive character performers, but if Disneyland closes the interactive Princess Hall, they still have Splash Mountain. At Evermore, the performers are the attraction. They're basically the only attraction. So at this point, pretty much everyone takes this as a death knell for the park, and I sit at home bitterly resenting my failure to go before its extinction. Meanwhile, fans of the park were outraged. Many of the same people who had donated to the GoFundMe campaign were past patrons of the park who had interacted with and loved the character performers. Part of the incentive to save the park was surely to ensure the continued employment of these people. So now, not only were the layoffs bad publicity, but they also felt like a deeply personal betrayal to a lot of the most loyal fans of the park. They all take to the fan pages on Facebook to vent their frustrations, and allegedly Ken Bretschneider and his wife showed up in the comments to argue with fans, which is never a good look. I say allegedly because a lot of the contentious content in those fan groups is swiftly deleted. Oh hey, speaking of Swift, Part 8. Evermore v. Swift.
Oh god.
In December of 2020, Taylor Swift releases her 9th album, Evermore. Hey, that sounds familiar. So initially the park responds with good humor.
Absolutely love that everyone online is talking about us. Hashtag Evermore. Thank you. Oh wait, it's an album? At Taylor Swift, anytime you want to come visit us, please let us know. Why, thank you for the spotlight. Hello, and thank you to our new followers. We'll assume that you are here due to the hashtag Evermore mix-up. Good to have you with us. Just a reminder, being from other worlds are allowed in the town of Evermore, but they must check in with the Pirate Guild first. Thanks!
And of course this is their reaction, because this is honestly pretty good news for the park. A lot of people are probably trying to Google the album and accidentally finding the park's website, which is pretty good free marketing for a park which is completely unknown to all but the most die-hard theme park enthusiasts. But this peace could not last. In February of 2021, Evermore files a complaint against Team Swift for infringement of their copyright. Some of the complaints are about what you'd expect from a copyright lawsuit. The document refers to Taylor Swift's Evermore merch as counterfeits of the original Evermore Park merch. And I know what they mean. I feel really bad for all the people who hopped on Google trying to buy merch for an obscure Utah theme park, unknowingly clicked on Taylor Swift's website, and were duped into buying her stupid album merch instead. They must have been so disappointed. The complaint also points out that Taylor had the gall to sell her album on Apple Music, the exact same platform that Evermore had already used to sell their Celtic violin and wind chime music. Back off, Taylor. Apple Music is theme park turf. Other grievances mentioned are frankly bizarre.
The Evermore album includes a song titled Evermore and 14 additional songs, 6 of which include explicit lyrics. The explicit versions of the Evermore album are provided with the parental advisory warning shown below.
Thanks for the picture of the label, bro.
Prior to defendants' release of the Evermore album, numerous published descriptions of Evermore referred to the epic tales that play out at Evermore Park. Miss Swift writes in the booklet that accompanies the Evermore album, quote, "I love the escapism I found in these imaginary/not imaginary tales. I love the ways you welcome the dreamscapes and tragedies of epic tales of love, lost and found." A copy of this booklet is attached as Exhibit C.
The booklet! A paragraph in the booklet of Taylor Swift's album poses a material threat to the profits of a Renaissance fair theme park. Apparently, while we weren't looking, this theme park claimed ownership over not only the word Evermore, but also the descriptor epic. They allege that this CGI image of a willow tree from Swift's music video, Willow, is an imitation of Evermore's two-dimensional Celtic-inspired non-willow tree logo. So yes, it appears that Evermore now also owns the concept of artistic depictions of any type of large tree.
Despite her publicly stated concerns for small and struggling artists facing large and better funded opponents, such as Apple and the record labels, Miss Swift now seeks to bury the previous released Evermore albums created by Evermore and misappropriate the Evermore trademark with no compensation to Evermore, because the company is facing financial difficulties due to the COVID-19 pandemic and cannot afford to engage in protracted litigation.
Oh, you're right, Evermore. The jealous Taylor seeks to bury you. All this time, she's been biding her time in the shadows, knowing that she couldn't beat you in a fair fight. She had to wait until you were at your most vulnerable to launch her insidious attack. They go on to claim that Evermore Park offers primarily essentially live visual and audio performances by an actor. The document points out that Taylor Swift has acted in projects such as Valentine's Day and The Lorax, and as such is an actor. And so, if she were ever to perform Evermore songs live, she would technically be offering live visual and audio performance by an actor. So this suggests that Taylor Swift, the human's career as a pop singer, is essentially legally the same as the day-to-day operation of a non-living theme park. In making this claim, Evermore overlooks the existence of Evermore Medieval Festival, a Renaissance fair and fantasy-based LARP experience founded in 2018, which Evermore has never identified as a threat to their copyright. The Evermore lawsuit asks roughly $2 million from Taylor Swift to make up for the damages she did to their brand by selling counterfeits of their merchandise. I can't help but wonder if even Brett Schneider and his lawyer suspected that this was a frivolous lawsuit, and perhaps hoped that Taylor Swift has so much money that she would just settle for some amount outside of court out of laziness. After all, $2 million would be a lot for Evermore to receive, but Taylor Swift probably wouldn't even notice it missing from her bank account. But if that was their aim, maybe they shouldn't have made such outlandishly specific claims. Maybe they shouldn't have attacked Taylor Swift's character by implying that she is attacking small businesses on purpose. So Team Swift fought back. First, they went through and refuted each one of Evermore's claims. It was clear that they didn't think they would lose to Evermore Park, but they obviously wanted to avoid the tedium and media attention of a legal battle. So first, Team Swift just sent like a legal letter back, like, no, drop this. But Evermore did not back down. But what Evermore didn't know was that Team Swift had an ace up their sleeve. Suddenly, Team Swift said, fine, you can sue us, but we're going to sue you back. They filed their
Seriously,
own
Taylor Swift has all of the
lawsuit
money
against Evermore Park.
How did they
for the
not
park's
anticipate this?
unauthorized use of Taylor's songs. Oh yeah, that's right. Remember those dwarfs? All they do is sing cover songs? Well, apparently some of those songs were by none other than T Swift, and she had the receipts. It's pretty obvious that Team Swift didn't actually care if a band of merry dwarves were singing covers of her songs at a small theme park. This new lawsuit was entirely an intimidation tactic to get Evermore to drop the first lawsuit. And their strategy worked. Evermore promptly dropped the lawsuit, Team Swift dropped theirs, and the war was over. But I wouldn't say that Evermore escaped unscathed, and I'm not just talking about legal fees. You'll recall that the fans were quite angry when they contributed to the GoFundMe campaign, only for a lot of their favorite performers to be fired. Well, they were even angrier when they heard about the lawsuit. We can't prove that any money from the GoFundMe actually was put toward legal fees, but those were definitely the optics of the situation. All over the fan pages, people were going off, like, we gave you all this money to pay your contractors, and here you are wasting it on a bad faith legal battle with a random pop star. This sapped up much of the remaining goodwill the fan base had for the park. Even those who still want to return to the park as guests seem to have the attitude of, love the park, hate the CEO. And that's not a great ground to be standing on when the park itself is the passion project of the CEO. I don't know, I feel like if I was running the Evermore Park socials when the Evermore album dropped, I would have just leaned into it as much as legally possible, connect with a local bluegrass artist, record a cover of one of her songs, and then shoot a fanciful YouTube video with your park as the location. And then upload it to the band's channel so you have legal deniability, but promote it heavily on your socials. Bonus points if it's a tribute to iconography from her existing music videos, because then the Swifties will circulate it for you. And maybe then they'll want to come to your park to shoot their own TikToks and pics for Instagram. Be like, Swifties welcome! This month, anybody who arrives in a Taylor Swift concert tee gets half-price admission. You don't even have to worry that much about the legal end of it, because Taylor Swift's team is certainly aware of the optics of attacking a tiny theme park unprovoked. You'd probably have to really step on their copyright or like imply that you're owned by Taylor before they would even bother stepping in. And anyway, if they did anything, the first thing they did would be to send you a cease and desist, at which point you could just cease and desist. I think Evermore Park might have assumed that all publicity is good publicity, and they were wrong. On every public forum where the park has any kind of presence, their comments are completely overrun by furious Swifties. And like, I get it, you guys. Your critiques are correct.
You don't want to
This
anger the
lawsuit
Swifties.
is ridiculous, but what are you doing?
Don't anger the
promise you,
Swifties.
Taylor Swift will be fine without you defending her honor on Facebook against independent theme parks. Evermore had complained
Don't anger
that
the
Swift was
Swifties.
damaging their SEO, but let's be real, they did far worse on their own. Now if you Google Evermore, the first thing you hear about is that they filed an unsuccessful, morally questionable lawsuit because they're going out of business. And I'd argue that delusional dying theme park tries to wring a few pennies out of Taylor Swift is not great publicity. So even though the case didn't go to court, they They still wasted money they didn't have on a lawyer to file the initial lawsuit, only to win nothing, ultimately hurt the park's reputation and tank its social media. What I'm trying to say is that this lawsuit was not only a bad move, it was probably the worst and stupidest financial decision that could have ever been made. Its timing, its intent, its execution were all handled so embarrassingly poorly that they sank Evermore even lower into arguably the most precarious position it's ever been in since it opened. But enough about that. Part 9, The Grid. Oh yeah! Who wants to hear about The Grid? Yeah! It's The Grid! The Grid is a radical new business venture by Ken Brettschneider. It opened just across the street from Evermore in August of 2019. The Grid was announced as a diverse entertainment venue. It would feature an electric indoor go-kart track, an arcade, a restaurant, a bar, VR experiences, and something called the Loft Music, which I imagine is either a club-style dance floor or just a lounge. Honestly, it sounds pretty similar in concept to the Air Center project. Insiders claim that the Grid has totally paid off all its startup costs and is now operating at a profit. While Evermore was in the midst of its mass layoff scandal and suing America's sweetheart, unproblematic fave The Grid was apparently just chugging along across the street, having a grand time and minding its business. So I'm gonna be real with you, The Grid kind of sucks.
It's a cool vibe. I feel like if this was closer to the road, I would drive by and be like, what's that? But it's not.
You walk in and are greeted by this weird, creepy, unfinished hallway.
Oh, and wait, what is that? Why does it? And also, like, well, yeah, why does the entrance door lead directly to an exit door? And also, like, why is the entrance not finished?
Isn't this like a new building?
It definitely is a new building.
And then you enter the lobby, which is kind of Great Gatsby meets industrial. The lobby is massive, but there's nothing to do in it but purchase your go-kart pass. I also expected more of the go-karts. For some reason, I had gotten it in my head that the reason it's indoors is to give it some kind of like fun disco lighting. I was picturing some cross between Tron and Mario Kart's Rainbow Road. Actually, I say for some reason, but the reason I think that is that that's totally what the initial ad made it look like. And then Brettschneider and his co-creator described it on a podcast as a holodeck capable of simulating different video game-esque environments as you race.
We basically are bringing all of these kind of digitally enhanced or digital experiences and creating kind of probably the most advanced kind of virtual entertainment center in the world right now. And there's several components going into, from simulation, different various types of simulation. That has interconnectivity between it, so you could do like air combat together, or you can do off-road racing or some kind of sci-fi thing.
And then directly compared it to Mario Kart and Tron.
One of the most advanced and largest indoor race tracks that is a three-dimensional track, and then we're creating an environment within that driving track, and I can't give you all the details on it because it's still kind of a top.
I was just going to say, can you give us any juicy details yet?
Yeah, I mean, I can say that it's going to be basically like a holodeck environment that you're racing in, so it's kind of almost like, would remind you of something like Mario Kart or something.
I have this deep affection for that side of tech and entertainment and fun with, Tron and all that kind of stuff. So the idea now that we're building, this grid of an entertainment center.
If you look at the maps of the track layout in the area where the riders gear up, you can see remnants of this original concept. One map shows a fantasy vibe with dragons flying overhead, and the other depicts an erupting volcano.
We're going to be creating different genres and themes that will exist for the races.
But no, it's a pretty visually uninteresting go-kart track. I guess the only benefit of it being indoors is to operate year-round, which is still pretty impressive. In fairness, I don't know go-kart regulations. It's possible that it would be a huge safety violation to put this in the dark with disco lights. Maybe they set out to build their holodeck and then found out they legally couldn't, or maybe they decided to cheap out at the last minute. It's honestly anyone's guess. But the fact that it wasn't a holodeck made me personally not interested in doing it. It's cool that the karts are electric and thus can be indoors, but they're still horrifically loud. In that vein, I actually give kudos to the soundproofing in the building. It was like really solid. We walked into the arcade, which was right next to the track, and it immediately got much quieter. And I'd imagine the muffling would have been complete if they had closed the doors, but they were permanently propped open, presumably because no one was in the arcade and they were trying to get people to go in there. And I'd imagine that's because the arcade is pretty sparse. The machines inside feel more geared toward being aesthetically dazzling than being popular games people want to play. When we went, the track was bustling, especially for a weekday, but every other part of the grid was a ghost town. There were also inexplicably these like little tables all throughout the center of the arcade room. Honestly, they might have been there just to try to make it look more full. I was thinking at first it was like for people to bring their own board games or maybe do D&D, but there was a little too much noise from the go-karts for that to ever be appealing.
This could be a board game hangout if you want to play D&D in a really loud building.
And then I thought maybe they were for food, but like, what food?
We're making it just kind of an easy decision. There'll be really great food and beverage integrated into it. And, you know, we make it so that it's just a really fun kind of like date night out, you know, with friends.
The lobby had a little snack bar counter, but it just sells chocolate bars and soda. And actually, I'm not confident they sell soda. I saw a soda fountain, but that thing might be empty back there. The promised bar and restaurant are nowhere to be seen, nor is there any indication that they still plan to add them. Same goes for the dance floor, the VR, basically everything but the go-karts. I picked up this brochure at the counter and it advertised 3 attractions at the grid: the go-karts, the arcade, and the lobby. Yeah, the lobby is meant to be an attraction in itself. There was also a sizable merchandise display, which I was very tickled by.
I guess I have to get it.
You have to get it.
I guess I have to.
Even though people are going to it, I can't imagine anything about that experience that would compel people to buy merch. I speculate that I am the only person ever to have bought this hoodie. I could imagine this place taking off if it was like more of a Dave & Buster's vibe. A big arcade, more of the Chuck E. Cheese variety where you can like earn tickets at some of the games and exchange them at a prize counter to get kids to actually keep playing. And then like a restaurant with stuff that parents will want to eat, encouraging them to linger and pay for their kids to get more tokens. Or, you know, at least like some bowling alley tier stuff that kids will want to eat. I mean, like I said, the grid is apparently doing just fine right now, so it is what it is. It's my impression that basically once you've built it, a go-kart track is pretty inexpensive to operate and you can charge a decent amount for it. So like, okay, the majority of the promised complex never opened. Nobody uses the arcade. The Art Deco lobby is a cavernous, unused, thematically inconsistent footnote in the experience. A pointless expanse you must cross to buy tickets for your unrelated go-kart ride.
So, you know, we're pulling out all the stops to do like the best technology in the world right now and bringing it all into one location.
There's elements to the racing that isn't just hopping on a track and speeding around, you know, bumper tires. It's actually a mood and an environment that you are racing in.
But the go-kart part is doing so well, the grid can just kind of languish in its mediocrity and be just fine. Good for grid. Anyway, let's get back to Evermore, shall we? Let's see how things are going over there. Part 10, the marketing. Things are going bad. It's come to my attention that in the big firing of 2021, Evermore's then PR manager parted ways with the park. It's unclear if this was voluntary or if he was one of those fired. So it's difficult to tell at this point whether Evermore even actually has a dedicated marketing team or a social media manager or anything like that. I know that if you're struggling to pay for tangible things like buildings and materials, hiring a full-time worker to update your website and Twitter might feel like an unnecessary extravagance. But for what you're spending, you truly will see the biggest return in value by having someone competent in this position. You know in children's fantasy movies when the old king is like, I will confer with my most trusted advisor, and then it cuts to this skinny, weaselly man wearing all black and purple, and he's like, yes, your majesty. And you, the audience, are like, that's the villain! Your Grace, he means you harm! Anyway, that's my headcanon for the current Evermore marketing team. Every aspect of this park's marketing right now is so poorly handled that it truly feels like an act of sabotage by someone who seeks to kill it. After the Taylor Swift debacle, Evermore's social media comments were entirely overrun by angry Swifties saying mean things, at which point Evermore seems to totally abandon ship. I'm exploring this in June of 2021. As of now, let's see what we've got on the socials. Instagram, silent since January 5th. Twitter, silent since December 29th. Hasn't liked or engaged with any tweets since January 6th. The announcement of the park's reopening was made on May 5th, only on their Facebook page. This is presumably because on Facebook, unlike most other social media, admins can delete disparaging comments. And the only drawback is that no one finds out the park is open. Evermore also created a TikTok account in April 2021, presumably because it was the only social media that the Swifties hadn't found them on yet. I think this is a good site to make Zoomers aware of your park, and we've seen a lot of success from businesses, museums, etc. on the app. Their TikTok hasn't really taken off yet, though. I'd also argue that even if it did, the TikToks on there fail to really promote any compelling reason to visit the park, as they usually focus on close-ups of character actors without showcasing what TikTokers might do themselves if they were to visit. Once I traveled to Evermore, I landed at Salt Lake City Airport, and on the drive over to Provo, I saw a ton of billboards along the route, mostly for MLMs and restaurants, but I'm sure you'll be very shocked to hear that I didn't see any billboards for Evermore. The first and only physical advertisement I saw for the park was hanging on the outside of the grid. The banner just says, Evermore Park, tickets on sale now. It might occur to you that if you look at this banner and you don't know what Evermore Park is, it's not really going to give you any clues. In the logo, the word Evermore is really big and the word park is really small. You can see that the font is kind of rustic, and maybe that will pique your interest. So that's okay. If you're curious, you can just Google it and find out what it is. Oh, they tried to sue Taylor Swift and appear to be going out of business. But perhaps you will persevere and go to their website. Now, websites can evolve all the time, but I would like to explore together what it looked like when I bought my tickets. So you go to the homepage and you see a banner with a few rotating images. None of these images are real photos of the park. They're just pieces of concept art of varying degrees of detail. Spoilers, but not a single thing in any of these images appears as it does in the park, and many of them do not appear in any form in the park at all. But if you scroll down, you'll see a couple photos. What is Evermore? Evermore is a world of play for all ages, immersed in a fantasy European hamlet of imagination. Sit back and enjoy savory food and treats as the world unfolds around you. Interesting. I think I'll click to learn more. Oh, that page is under construction. Back to the home page we go. Further down on the page, we can see 4 experiences highlighted. One of those experiences is Open Gates. I don't know if being open counts as an attraction, you guys. It looks like the park also features a train ride and 2 restaurants. Trying to click on any of these things yields another page under construction, but I guess they're fairly self-explanatory. Let's go to that navigation bar up there. Okay, I'd love to keep you in suspense because it's kind of funny, but I'm just going to cut to the chase. Every single page offered in the navigation header is under construction. The only exceptions being the Jobs tab and the Buy Tickets page, although that page sometimes stops working too. I already knew that I was determined to go to Evermore in order to make this video, and even so, I went to the website hoping to find information which I was unable to find. Maybe a dress code, the rules, what to bring, maybe menus of food offerings so that guests with dietary restrictions could plan ahead, maybe information about the story of the park and how the gameplay works. I can only imagine how instrumental these things might be for guests actually trying to decide whether or not to go. Actually, to get answers to most of my questions, I ended up joining multiple Evermore fan groups on Facebook and Discord, and it turns out that the majority of these fan groups are actually moderated by employees of the park. They're involved enough to actually quickly delete any critical remarks from fans, and I can't help but wonder why this energy isn't just put toward, you know, maintaining their official channels instead. I actually tried to inquire on a couple fan groups about the current state of the website and you know, how bad it is. And I was told that it looks so bad because at the beginning of this year, after they laid everyone off, the operation of the website was outsourced to a third-party company. I don't know if this explanation is true, but if it is, it's bad. Why would you hire a third-party company to take over your website only for them to put every page under construction and then immediately abandon it just ahead of your reopening? Somebody tell these guys about Squarespace. And by somebody, I mean every YouTuber who's done an ad read for them. You can't just say, the reason my website is bad is because I'm running it in an extremely uncommon and unwise way. Because then, to that I say, well, run it a different way then. Then again, maybe posting a half-finished website that's still under construction with some kind of biting meta-commentary on the state of the park. Even the social media buttons at the bottom of the site aren't functional. The Twitter button just leads to twitter.com and so on. I'm guessing this was made on Wix or Squarespace or something because it seems like they just added the templates for the social media buttons and then never followed up. So, you know, I have some doubts about the story that it's being run by a third party. I actually attempted to email the park through the inquiries form on their website. Firstly, because I was planning to go to the park the first week it reopened. The website didn't indicate that this would be a scaled down offering, but, you know, my intent wasn't to sabotage the park and make it look bad, and for some reason I was skeptical as to whether they would truly be ready to reopen by the announced opening date. So in the little contact form, I asked whether the park, as it appeared at reopening, would be a representative example of the Evermore experience. Secondly, I saw that they theoretically rent out the park for private parties, film shoots, photography. I kind of thought that I could get cooler looking B-roll if it was empty of guests and like I could bring a bigger camera and a tripod and stuff. I kind of suspected that maybe I could have gotten access to it for free if I said I was doing like a review, but I didn't want an inauthentic experience of the park, so I just said I wanted it for like photography and video shooting, and I was willing to go out of pocket to do it. So I just asked what the typical hourly rate and minimum rental time would be for a photography and video session, no actors needed. Anyway, that was like a month before my visit, and I just never got a response to any part of it. So, I don't know, I wonder if that form actually goes to an email address anymore. Like maybe it's not even hooked up. Maybe it's just going off into the void. Not the void, you know, but actual void. Once I was in Utah, I met up with my friend Kate, who lives pretty nearby and had actually never heard of Evermore until I told her about it. When I began researching this video and like telling people I was going, I was surprised to learn that like pretty much nobody had heard of Evermore. This struck me as really odd, especially when it comes to people that live in Utah. As soon as I rolled into town, I just started asking everybody I encountered whether they had heard of Evermore. Hotel desk clerks, cashiers, waiters, other tourists. I was like, have you heard of Evermore? No. Always no. The only people who had ever heard of it were people that I was like Twitter mutuals with because we both love theme parks. And even then, a lot of them hadn't heard of it, including like theme park journalists. So obviously when it comes to your typical consumer, they absolutely have not heard of Evermore. I stayed at a hotel in Provo, the closest city to Pleasant Grove.
Oh my god.
On the way into the lobby, I saw one of those typical big brochure stands advertising local tourist attractions. There were brochures from places as far away as Idaho, but nothing promoting Evermore Park. You'd think they could just print out a couple brochures and put them in the lobby. Unfortunately, that was foreshadowing. Anyway, seemingly against the evil royal vizier's best efforts, I did in fact book a trip to Evermore. So I guess now it's time to have a look around. Join me. Hooray! Woo-woo! Okay. Part 11, the park. Suddenly, on April 28th, 2021, Evermore announced that they would be reopening June 4th. And by announced, I of course mean that they posted about it on their first ever post on a brand new TikTok account with no followers. It's fine, I've been watching them like a hawk, so I caught it. And rather than redirecting to a broken page, their ticketing link quietly started working again. Great marketing, guys. Initially, everyone assumed the park would return in its restructured format. Remember, the kind with no actors, because that's what Evermore had said when they fired everybody. This left fans with a pretty reasonable question: then what is there to do? The actors, after all, were the park's main attraction. But as we got closer to the park's opening, Evermore did start replying to questions in the comment sections of their Facebook and TikTok pages. So specifically people who were obsessive like me and willing to sift endlessly through their pages were able to glean a little more information. Again, great marketing, guys. Evermore said that they would in fact be bringing back character interaction and had hired a cast of roughly 30 character performers.
Very indecisive.
Some of these actors would be returning previously fired employees, presumably all the ones who hadn't scrambled to find other jobs, moved back in with their parents because they couldn't afford rent anymore, or been disillusioned by the park and didn't want to come back. Having already thought once that I had permanently missed my chance to see the park, and considering the ongoing precariousness of the operation, it seemed urgent that I go. So I went ahead and just booked the very first weekend of the reopening at the beginning of June. The reopening season was a mythos, the summer season, originally conceived as a lantern festival celebrating fairies and dragons. I love Halloween, but I thought it made the most sense to go in the summer season because then I could see the park in its most neutral state. I basically just wanted an unthemed look at the characters, the architecture, the ambiance without temporary holiday decorations distracting me or scare actors jumping out, and frightening me. For Mythos of 2021, Evermore would only be open Fridays and Saturdays from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m., so not very long. Apparently this is actually normal for this park. It appears on archived versions of their website that the Halloween season would sometimes operate on additional days, which makes sense, it's the most popular. Past seasons might have also had slightly later closing times, but it doesn't seem like the park has ever really been open in like the afternoon, which is a little strange. So that was another appeal of the summertime. I would have the most daylight that I could. I knew it was a small park and I figured I could probably do it in one day, but I just went ahead and booked Friday and Saturday to be safe. I'm glad I did, more on that later. So I went online and I bought 8 tickets total for my whole crew, as well as 4 tickets so we could all ride the train, all in one transaction. I would actually like to caution you against doing that. It seems that when you purchase anything through the Evermore website, it emails you a single QR code with your whole purchase and the dollar number that you spent, but there's no kind of like itemized receipt proving what you bought. So when I got to the gates on day 1, the system had bundled my whole train ticket purchase together, and they were like, you only have 1 ticket. And I was like, but I'm certain I bought 4. And I'm like busting out my calculator app, like trying to itemize it myself, like, yeah, that's 4. And they were like, oh, well, you'll just have to buy them again. And Evermore doesn't have a guest relations department, so you're just completely out of luck. And then we went back on day 2, and I showed the same QR code because remember I had bought 8 tickets, and the system showed that all 8 of my admission tickets had been scanned on day 1, so now I had no tickets.
So this actually says that it's for the 4th, but you bought them for today.
Oh yeah, no, I bought them for the first day, but when you buy them on a site, you do select what days you're buying tickets for, so I don't actually know how this could happen, like from a technical standpoint, but it did. So I didn't have any tickets. So there were 4 for yesterday and 4 for today.
Did you just get the one QR code?
Yeah, they only sent 1 for the whole order. Yeah.
It kind of bothers me that the lamp is facing away from the
This
bed.
ticket taker was way more understanding,
really want
and
the
she
lamp.
let us in on the honor system, and she...
Oh, hi, Livy Dragon. Yeah! We're watching about Evermore. Which, I haven't mentioned it yet, but I suppose, spoiler alert, since this video, the park shut down. And, like, the land was sold off. So that was, yeah. I think, on Jenny's Patreon, she has, like, a, I don't know what the term is. Not like a sequel video, but maybe like a follow-up, I guess, talking about it. It was a failure the day it was opened. Oh yeah, we are learning lots about that. I say we. I've watched this video like 8 times already. I have a thing with video essays. It's just, but yeah. Well, welcome to co-working. Happy Pride Month, and all that good stuff. Yeah, I'm still like half asleep. I'm not very functional at the moment, so we're just chilling. I'm decorating my digital space here for Pride Month. This is the gist of what we're doing, and then maybe if I feel like we're doing some Loop Hero later, to be determined. But for now, I'm enjoying learning about very ambitious and poorly planned out theme parks.
Even gave us our missing train tickets, which was super nice of her, but you know, she didn't have to, and if she had decided not to, we would have had no recourse. So I guess what I'm saying is don't buy anything in advance, don't buy anything digitally, just like walk up to the ticket booth, buy your tickets, get them physically handed to you, because if you don't, you just might never see them again. For what it's worth, the ticket prices are low, so this isn't like super high stakes, but it's still kind of bad, you know, to buy stuff and then it's gone. Anyway, at the time that we went, admission was only $15 per adult. It seems in the past it's been as high as $34, which I still don't think is a lot, but also I'm from California and everything's really expensive here. My perspective is skewed. Even a movie ticket here is like $20, which I understand is not the case in other states. So from what I've heard from Utahns, Evermore is considered very expensive for what it is and where it is. Not to mention if you're a family with children, the kids aren't buying their own tickets. So if you're bringing multiple kids, your experience could easily go over $100. When we arrived at the park on day 1, there was a robust last line at the front, but when we went inside it was eerily empty. I had imagined we'd walk in and see a thriving town square of characters waiting to interact with us and maybe in a tutorial-esque fashion sort of explain what's going on in the town of Evermore today.
Maybe there's like a brochure that will give us guidance. Okay, so this is food. It is like really empty in here.
But no, it was just a bunch of empty, locked buildings.
Wait, so what is this building? Can we go inside of it? Oh, maybe. Okay, I think you're right. I think it's Xander's Keep. Yeah, that totally is.
Failing characters, I had imagined that we would be handed some kind of pamphlet outlining the story or gameplay, which I could then put in my big binder of theme park maps. There weren't any of those either. And the employees at the gate hadn't given us anything to go off of. They had just let us inside. And there we were. As I said, they have no guest relations department, and they also have no information kiosk, which I would argue this park needs more than a typical theme park even would. So if you have any questions about the park, you have to exit and try to ask the ticket takers, the only employees who are not in character. Also, in the time that we were there, they only unlocked one of the entrance doors, so the entrance and exit were all the same doorway, and there was a line going both ways, so they were very busy. I tried to just ask them where I could get a map or a brochure, which would explain what's in the park, and then I could put it in my binder. The answer was nowhere.
I have maps, but not for.
Wee.
But that one
I
was
love
for
Jenny.
Aurora.
Do you know if you'll have maps tomorrow?
Probably.
Okay.
They had, in their words, some kind of map fiasco, so there were supposed to be brochures, but there weren't. Some theme parks I've been to, even if you don't pick up a map, they have like a large, permanently affixed map on a sign that you can consult, but Evermore didn't have anything like that, so we were off down the trail. We almost went west, but we were seduced by the sound of a train whistle to the east.
We go right or left? Let's go clockwise. The train!
So we headed east instead, which was a mistake, as it's certainly the less finished side of the park. When you walk east, you pass, in this order, the closed gift shop, a closed concession stand, an unfinished chapel, this maintenance building where I believe the trains are stored, it's off limits to guests, a closed building with some chickens!
Chickens! Wait! The park is closed now. Where did the chickens go? I need to know about the chickens! Oh no. Y'all see me play Stardew. I take my chickens very seriously.
I was thinking they'd hear me and come over, but it didn't work.
This unmarked closed building, which I later discovered is called Hunter's Hovel and once sold snacks.
Ooh. Okay, no. And inside it's storage. It's all storage.
Probably.
And
Sold is probably
An
the best
unfinished
outcome,
grain
let's be
silo,
honest.
An unfinished building called Drakenhaven, blocked off by sawhorses.
Is there a trail to it?
Deathly Hallows. No.
Oh yeah, it's blocked off. Fine, I'll respect their tarp.
I mean, I see a pathway.
I know, right? I really just want to. I'm sure it's just full of like snakes and buzzsaws.
Then you arrive at this large grassy expanse at the back of the park. This area is called Old Town, which makes no sense because it has no buildings. More like Old Field, am I right? But anyway, this is the most active area of the park. Here you'll find archery, axe throwing, the entrance to the train, a tent marketplace with third-party vendors selling their wares, kind of like a typical Renaissance fair. There are also a couple wooden stalls set up for characters to tell you about their guilds. More on that later. Now that you're at the back of the park, you start to get into the more complete structures. We arrived at this location called The Burrows. It's obviously a hobbit house, but in Evermore canon, the dwarves live here because dwarves are public domain. I knew from online footage that this structure used to hold the talented dwarf musicians who would play covers of popular artists such as Taylor Swift.
Are we supposed to go in here? Because it is half blocked. I think we can go in. I think it's fine.
As we approached, I heard piano in the building and I was like, oh, an activity. But when we went inside, there weren't any characters at all.
It's very empty.
There was a piano, but it was sitting unattended, so what I'd heard must have been a guest tapping away at it. Or, you know, a ghost, I guess.
There's nobody in here. There's nobody here. Where are all the dwarves?
I can see that they've purchased a lot of probably authentic antiques, but nothing about the decor feels intentional. The antiques they do have are set around in little clusters with no apparent rhyme or reason. It definitely feels like they shopped first and then threw stuff in the building second. The house doesn't feel lived in because nobody puts furniture in their house like this. Moving on, we saw this huge statue, which is sort of the park's icon. It's giant and very cool, cool. I think the area around the base is meant to be a fountain, but there was no water in it. I also believe the angel used to be holding a sword, but now his hand is in an empty clasped pose like a Luke Skywalker action figure. I saw this behind the scenes video with the sculptor, and he keeps saying that the statue was meant to be cast in bronze. And clearly it wasn't, so maybe it was like a durability issue because the materials had changed and they could no longer bear up under the weight of this sword. I know nothing about statues. I'm just guessing. But to my untrained eye, it definitely looks to me like the sword was too heavy, the whole hand fell off, and then it was reattached without the sword. The next structure we passed is this crypt. When we got there, it was locked up tight, but we'll circle back to it later. Next, we encountered the Slanting Shanty. I guess the in-universe story of this building is that it was once stomped on by a giant, and it's been a bit crooked ever since. It's very whimsical. I've been told by employees that the shanty once served food, such as soup and bread bowls, which sounds delicious. When we went, the shanty was yet another locked up building and was also in a state of disrepair.
Wait, what do you think this usually is? It's got a window?
Maybe a...
It's like a service window and a hole in the wall.
Somebody got angry at us. I want to join some kind of guild.
I've gained no insight from that.
So, word on the street is that when the shanty was being used for food service, its whimsically slanted chimney was functional, and actual smoke and heat would go up it. Allegedly, a hairline crack in the metal infrastructure of this chimney led to a lot of hot gas hitting the wood on the other side, and it started to smolder, and then the whole building started to smoke. And allegedly, guests had to be directed away because the park was open, and the fire department had to come, and it was a whole big mess. I don't think the building ever actually caught fire, and I'm not saying any of the holes I saw in it were from that. I think they're from disrepair and like weather and stuff. But anyway, I thought it was an interesting story, and now they don't use the building anymore. It just sits dark and actors gather around outside of it. Next is the Nettleton Mill. This is actually my favorite structure on the property. It looks so cute and fanciful, like a Thomas Kincaid painting or something. I think Snow White would live in a cottage like this. And it has a water wheel and this little pond around it. The water feature did result in those little clouds of like hundreds of gnats that try to fly into your mouth and eyeballs, so I didn't love that.
There's so many bugs. So many bugs. I just walked mouth open through a cloud of bugs. Hey! I just swallowed a bug.
But I guess I consider it a decent trade-off for how lush and iconic it makes this area of the park look. The water wheel wasn't turning during our visit, which I consider very lame. It's the little things, you know, they all add up. But I do know the wheel is at least capable of turning because I've seen it in other vlogs. In my opinion, standing at the base of this structure and looking over at it, the total package of the structure and the landscaping makes it the single most lovely and complete visual in the park. So you're probably wondering what's in the building, and the answer is nothing. Again.
I looked in and it's all electrical panels.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
No!
I'm sorry, it's clearly not intended for anyone to ever see inside.
This is a cabin I would live in.
Yeah, you can see in this hole. I knocked first. There's a cute knocker. But yeah, but look, it's literally just like electric panels.
Oh, that's really sad.
If you back up and look at the upper level windows, it looks like there's a loft, and that's full of trash or something.
It's not like garbage.
I think it's just garbage. Great.
It reminds me of The Grudge 2.
The Grudge 2.
So it kind of appears as though this building was never intended to be open to guests, and that's crazy to me. Anyway, next is the Crooked Lantern Tavern. This building has big permanently open doorways on either side, which definitely cuts down on the tavern vibe. I feel like a tavern in a fantasy story is always a dark, enclosed, mysterious place with hidden corners and booths at which crazy characters sit. This tavern honestly has the shape and layout of a barn or one of those covered bridges in Amish country. I mean, the path really goes directly through the middle of it. All that open air really kills the ambiance, but unfortunately doesn't clear out the body odor of all the guests inside. I'm not trying to be mean. It was honestly very overwhelming. I tried not to notice, but we didn't stay there that long because it smelled really bad. That's not the park's fault, but it was the case both days we were there. So like, I feel like I have to mention it. Like maybe you'll see pictures and think, maybe I would hang out at the tavern. And no, you wouldn't. The acoustics of this building are also pretty unbearable. It was so noisy and echoey, and they didn't have any ambient music or like draperies hung around to try to cut down on that. It was truly an assault on many of my senses. I think the tavern is one of those locations where frequent visitors like to linger for hours at a time. There were only a few tables in there, and they were fully occupied at all times, and every time we walked through there was like a really loud guest-led sing-along happening. I'm sure they were having fun, but, you know, as first-timers that might have wanted to go in and talk to the characters, it just didn't seem like a good place to do that. And that's a shame, because I think some of the important characters of the game hang out in there, but they were also pretty monopolized by the regular guests, so we were just like, whatever, let's just leave.
I'm gonna just get out of the way.
I do think the tavern has cool decorative elements entirely up on the walls. The area behind the bar looked nice, and there was this great taxidermy dragon head up over the door. That was fun. Moving down the trail, they have this greenhouse. Well, they call it the glass house, but it's like a greenhouse. When I heard there was a greenhouse, I was immediately excited because I imagined all of the cool things you could do in a fantasy greenhouse with a relatively limited budget. I imagined, since this was once planned to be a botanical garden, that the greenhouse could showcase displays of visually weird and exotic plants. And then sprinkled among those, you could put in fake plants made by the in-house sculpting team that are totally fantastical. Like they have tentacles or teeth or whatever. Perhaps a tree with a face, just throwing it out there. You could even put in a few plants out of the reach of the guests that have very simple mechanical elements, like plants that breathe or wiggle back and forth. Just a very basic single motor animatronic, again, could be made in-house, and then you could pipe in background noise of chirping or buzzing to give a fuller impression of life. And there could be actors inside playing alchemists or whatever who could tell you about both the real and fake plants. So it's still edutainment, but it's also whimsical. Maybe there's like a workstation where one of them is brewing a potion.
It's
You
fine.
can snoop through their notes for clues to the story. But no, the greenhouse is mostly empty with benches
fine, you
inside because it
guys.
houses a bird show. We'll put a pin
Jeez.
in that. Moving on, we arrive at the Copper Confection. Externally, this is another of my favorite buildings. Standing in front and looking up at it, the way it nestles into the path, it makes me long for Halloween, specifically a cute Santa's Village type experience, but for Halloween, a quaint little Halloween town with stone confectionaries and pumpkin-headed citizens waiting to greet me. Anyway, let's go inside. I'll cover this more in my food section, but this is an eatery with not much furniture inside. The standout piece of decor is Tip Top the Automaton's desiccated corpse.
Hey, there's some merch, you guys.
Oh no. Poor Tip Top.
No, that's not Tip Top.
R.I.P. King.
Well, it doesn't have the head.
Yeah, supposedly the costume fell apart, and rather than repairing or replacing it, they retired the character. So, you know, that didn't last long.
Okay.
Your sunglasses.
My liege.
Across the path is this little garden that's supposed to have fairy vibes, which looks very nice. It has rocks with faces. I love when things like rocks have faces. I was hoping to see some trees with faces, which I like even more than rocks with faces, but alas, they didn't have any of those. Then we arrive at the bathrooms. I didn't get any footage of those. Sorry, it seemed weird. I heard they were just normal bathrooms. There are no bathrooms at the back of the park for some reason. They're only at the front, which I find a little odd because there's more going on at the back, and that takes us right back to the start at the park entrance. I think one thing I wasn't prepared for is how unfinished everything still is. I obviously expected some construction, but a lot of the vloggers who have gone have really glossed over it and tried to shoot away from it at certain angles. The park opened unfinished, and people were understanding about it back then because the park was still really new, but it's now been 3 years, and I don't think there's been any work on it since then. And I get that they ran out of money, but I also expected that the unfinished parts of the park would be on the outskirts, kind of
It's just straight up
unobtrusive.
never
The very
finished.
first sight we saw when we walked in the
sad.
gate was this thing. From what I can tell, this dry expanse of concrete, straw, and exposed wires is intended to be the dancing fountain. I imagine that the swirly pattern on the ground is where a track for fountains, bubble jets, something like that would go. Maybe the necessary equipment is already there, under those patches of dry straw. The safest place for electronics to be. Honestly, if that's the case, this park needs to ship in a lot more dry straw because there's a lot of stuff that's just out.
Good, that's good of you. That's good of you. Because you come in the park and you're like, wow, fantasy world. Oh. Oh, what's all this?
You know, maybe get some faux leaves or even large swaths of burlap, which looks a little more themed. Above the knot fountain is this gazebo, which I
just making all
imagine
these
was meant to
appliances
host
and
grand
decorations
ceremonies
different
or
colors.
something. But they never used it for anything
That's
all
about the point
weekend,
we're
and
at.
no characters ever went up there. We saw a maintenance guy wandering around it a couple times, and I think there was like a toolbox set on the floor, or maybe it was an igloo cooler. And that's it.
I would imagine if the dancing fountain was completed that there would be like an actor that stands up there like a wizard with a staff that goes like, and now I command the water.
One of the tallest and most eye-catching structures on the property is this grand chapel. It's currently unfinished, so where all the windows would be, it has big sheets of plywood like it's weathered a storm, and the exterior walls still have the supply company logo on them. I would think even if they can't afford to finish the building, they could at least make short-term cosmetic improvements like whitewashing the whole thing. Again, I'm not trying to dump on this park for being broke. The unfinished state of it is what it is, but what frustrates me is the seeming lack of foresight or planning. A business doesn't just run out of money as a surprise. The state Evermore is in now is more or less the same as it looked when it opened. And in the early stages, they must have known that the money they had was all they were going to have until it opened and started turning a profit. So I don't understand how they didn't know exactly how many buildings they were going to be able to build. One ought to prioritize the buildings in the most centralized cluster near the front gate. Then you could have all that empty land at the outskirts of the park to finish when you can afford it, if that ever happens. But guests visiting the unfinished park will still feel like the park is finished, because the parts that they're in and interacting with are. That is not at all what Evermore did. The construction sites are very visible. And this is compounded further by the fact that, of the buildings they do have, most are sitting empty and locked. This park purports to be an immersive world, but you can't even explore anything. What was even the point of building a town at all when the majority of the action is just people wandering around outside? Here, I have taken an old promotional Evermore map that I found online and put a star on all themed structures. I'm discounting things such as bathrooms and walk-up hot dog windows and understandably backstage buildings like the train barn. And as you can see, I've come up with 13 themed buildings. A green star represents a building you can enter, and a red star is closed to guests. As you can see, at the time of my visit, we've got 5 green stars and 8 red stars. I feel like the locked buildings could at least be made into tableaus that the guests could look into through windows, kind of like the ghost town at Knott's Berry Farm when they don't have the actors in it. Instead, they're either unfinished or externally finished but totally closed and shuttered, begging us not to notice them.
Okay, what's in here? Yeah. Oh, there's nothing in it.
So functionally, this is a park with 5 buildings. If we think about the ticket price, that's $3 a building. And arguably only 3 of those buildings have actual activities for guests to do. And as I said earlier, sometimes it's the little things, and all around the park there are these little cosmetic details that have never been completed or have been let go. Random planters will have garbage strewn inside.
Oh, it's snacks. Ew.
You can see coolers set around abandoned construction sites. And the theme of the day was really exposed wires.
Yeah, you'd think they would think this is a trip hazard unless the balcony was blocked off.
Oh my god, those are just loose wires dangling.
Oh my god! Oh my god, and it's raining!
Exposed.
It's raining, we're all gonna die. It's a trap. Whoa, some more exposed wires.
Oh my god.
With it threatening to rain constantly, that just doesn't seem like a good situation. And they're on every column.
It's power cord.
The beautiful, beautiful power cord.
I just noticed those ones too.
Oh yeah. God. Yeah, they're everywhere. And there's also a huge pit. Ooh.
The park does look much better in the dark, which is a compliment I receive a lot too. Firstly, you can't so easily see all the stuff that's wrong with it, and the construction sites aren't illuminated, so they escape your notice. But also the ways they've chosen to light it are really nice. The placement of lights pointed at buildings is very strategic and flattering, and they use a lot of different colors of light. Most of the buildings are evenly bathed in blue light from the outside, but they have the cheerful yellowy light pouring out through the windows. Other little outside features are accentuated with green, purple, and red bulbs. It's such a cool vibe.
Whoa! It is really nice. Whoa! Whoa!
We did notice that a lot of the lighting is not directed at the paths, which can become a little treacherous to navigate as the night wears on. Some of the walkways are twisty, sloped, uneven, and there are long stretches without footlights where you truly can't see where you're putting your feet. My vlog camera naturally brightens up dark environments, and there were multiple points where I was using the viewfinder to see by. The park bills itself as being ADA compliant, which I think must be actually legally true, and they don't have any stairs anywhere. But I think in execution, the lighting could probably pose a real problem for accessibility, which I think a lot of people forget is not entirely people in wheelchairs. One thing the dark can't disguise is all the neighboring office buildings because they have lights of their own. Like I said, Pleasant Grove is mostly office park, and Evermore is bundled in between several of them. You can blatantly see these on the horizon at all parts of the day. Honestly, I don't care that much about that. I mean, I care about it. It's very obtrusive, but I'm not like mad about it. Supposedly, Evermore was supposed to be enclosed in a big high wall, and then they ran out of money. They have a little bit of a berm, a big earthen donut that encircles the park and helps with sightlines. I think their secondary plan is for the trees that they've planted around the perimeter to grow in, which takes a long time, and buying adult trees is expensive, so I get why they did what they did. I think for their resources, this is like the best they could have possibly done, other than maybe picking a plot of land that wasn't next to office parks. It kind of is what it is, but I also thought I should mention it because if you're going there to take like cosplay photos or wedding photos, they're gonna be in all of them. I think the biggest issue here is that the office buildings are their own thing, but then we've also got the construction that's inside of the park, and together they form a huge 1-2 punch to the ambiance. Between the two, there's no one section that feels complete and immersive. This park is theoretically rentable as an event venue, photography, or a filming location, but it would be almost impossible to use it for any of those things because you're extremely limited in your locations and angles in order to frame out something ugly or incomplete. Also, I've got to say, despite all these construction sites everywhere, there was one glaring omission to the park. I didn't even see a shell of this building, nothing to indicate they even started building it at all. It was this amazing whimsical tree cottage. This building is iconic, and they also show the concept art of it everywhere. It was on the 2017 version of the website, it's even on the current version of the website. They're probably showing the art so much because if this building existed, it would certainly be a highlight of the park. But due to its unique shape, it would be pretty obvious if building was underway, and I saw no sign of it anywhere. If we go back to that mysterious 2017 version of the website for Evermore Gardens, it looks like the tree cottage was to be part of a land called Fantasy Garden. It appears that that land as a whole was never constructed, or maybe that fairy garden with the rock faces is Fantasy Garden. If so, I don't even see a plot of land where this tree cottage could have gone. I have to wonder when it was stricken from the plans and why it wasn't considered a priority. All that said, there are some visual details around the park that I really like. In the fairy garden with the rocks with faces, we noticed at night that periodically an ominous droning sound would play and the rocks would glow red like we had angered them.
If they Whoa! Whoa! We angered the gods. They've all turned red.
That's fun. They had a couple fire pits scattered throughout the park, which I imagine you're meant to sit at and converse with characters or other guests. Nobody was really doing that, but in theory that's nice. They also had some enclosed fireplaces, and those had these lovely bespoke dragon grates in front of them. I love that. You get such whiplash looking around the park. You can laser focus in one direction and see something you really like, but then look to the side and there's something incomplete right next to it. Even of the buildings that are finished, the interiors are either inaccessible or feel barely furnished. I can see that of the rare pieces that are finished, a lot of love and care went into them, but the majority of the park is simply not finished. Anyway, let's look at activities. Part 12, the gameplay. Evermore has been billed as a living theatrical experience, or an adventure park. Ever since the re-envisioning of 2017, Evermore was meant to have an emphasis not on rides, but on personalized quests and interactions with the characters. Over the time Evermore has been open, it's had a lot of different play structures, and information is limited on all of them, but I'll try to enumerate the different formats as best as I understand them. Before its opening, it was apparently planned to be more of a guided experience, a little more scripted, more like a theatrical performance. The park is built in a circular layout because guests would theoretically depart in different tour groups from location to location. At each location, major story beats would play out, the group would move on, and then they'd play it again for the next group that came through. I have to assume that that covered bridge layout of the tavern, where the path goes right down the middle, was a holdover from this format. I believe that this format would have still been loosely interactive, but certainly a lot more structured. This seems a little closer in spirit to things like Sleep No More, one of the most famous interactive theatrical productions. In fact, according to some former employees, Ken Brettschneider has cited Sleep No More as an inspiration for the interactive elements of Evermore. Some of the opening season actors say that they were prepared for this version of the experience throughout the majority of the rehearsals, and then it was abruptly scrapped when it became clear that many of the park's buildings would not be finished in time. Instead, at opening, characters as well as guests would be free roaming throughout the park, and there was a greater emphasis on guests completing tasks and challenges. And then from there, from season to season, the gameplay has seen a lot of different changes from major to minor minor. I found this review from fall of 2018, the park's opening season, which mentions kid quests. Evermore basically handed out this little worksheet to the young park guests, guiding them through various activities. It challenges them to interact with characters, play beanbag toss, walk through the catacombs, and look for a handful of themed objects in like an I Spy kind of game. If the kids handed in their worksheet at the end of the night, they would receive a little drawstring pouch full of items like plastic gems, a coin,
Our normal one
I
is
think
this
this is
one.
a good level at which kids
I
can
go with
engage with the
breakfast?
park. It reminds me of scavenger
I also
hunts
kinda
that
want
the local
sushi.
museum would host when I was a kid.
But I think I want
Although, without
breakfast.
rotating challenges and prizes, I
Without
can't imagine it would
breakfast. I decided.
incentivize many families to come back again, but that's its own problem. As for adults, there have been two major objectives which seem to have remained pretty constant throughout the park's operation: completing quests and joining guilds. The same opening season review explains that in 2018, adults could try to win the Evermore Champion Challenge.
Look, you lot. Evermore is looking for a new champion, and one of you could be it. There are a few rules. First,
More
you need to be in
pancakes.
Evermore before the portals close on November 3rd.
And you need to collect all 4 tarot cards and make sure that they're...
Get away. He's not wrong, though. And make sure you send in a video submission.
The instructions are sort of vague, but it seems that you could essentially earn tarot cards by completing tasks given to you by characters. It's totally unclear whether the tasks were the same for everybody or whether the tasks and the cards could just be handed out randomly at the discretion of the characters. This was a real contest though. Only one person could win and they would get free tickets and a backstage workshop tour. So, not to sound like a pessimist, but doesn't that kind of make the tarot quest feel like an exercise in futility for the majority of the guests that go? And the park producers did seem to notice that, if a little too late.
Our strategy for making the audience the heroes has gone back and forth multiple times across the seasons. In the original Lore 2018, we had the Champion quest line, which allowed a select few World Walkers to become named Champions of Evermore. This was excellent for capturing that idea of being a hero for those specific guests, but was actually disastrous for every guest in the park who didn't happen to complete that quest. Quite a few guests left the park furious about it. So, we redirected from that, but unfortunately overcorrected and caused guests to become flat out bored in Aurora 2018 and Mythos 2019. We found
Okay,
a
I
decent
think we
middle
might be
ground
done
in Lore
decorating.
2019 and have attempted to perfect the idea
Maybe.
from there.
So let's look at some quests from Mythos 2019. YouTuber Ginny D attended during this time frame. It looks like for her visit to Evermore, they had a system of quest cards. So you start with your first quest card, printed in a little pamphlet inside your park map that she got. This system no longer exists, but my impression is that you'd get each card either stamped or signed off before you could proceed, so you would sort of collect them as you go.
It did cost us $2 to get the next set of 3 quest cards, and unfortunately they're not equipped to take cash, so that was a little
Try to hang
inconvenient.
out
When we
in
went
some
back to the
different
Kettle
areas,
Cafe,
see
they let
how
us
I
know that they
feel
didn't
about
actually
it.
have any more quest cards printed and available yet.
The idea is that you complete these quests sequentially and you're moving up through official ranks as you go. Joining the park's various guilds was also a possible activity, and I believe that the ranks had different names depending on which guild you were a member of.
In the remaining 4-ish hours we had in the park, we were able to complete all 3 of these quest cards, leaving us as level 4 paladins.
This D&D vlogger named Greyhawk mentions the quest cards, but also that the day they went featured a side quest about joining the Knights, and they even handed out a little flyer that's spelled wrong. Also, this guy said that he went in cosplay as Sir Davos Seaworth, which is incredible. He looks exactly like him. YouTuber The Fairy Cheyenne also had quest cards for her experience, and apparently her group was told that as the park grew, they would introduce perks or tangible rewards for leveling up. This is the only mention I've ever seen of it, and it doesn't seem like that was ever implemented. I agree with Trevor Ballard's earlier statement in that it does seem like the gameplay peaked in Lore of 2019. And handily, a lot of the most complete gameplay footage I have access to is from that season, so let's take a look. One of the subsidiaries of BuzzFeed put out a video like, "You need to go here," promoting Evermore Park. This video was shot in Lore of 2019, and it provides probably the clearest picture I've ever seen of a typical day in Evermore. The host enters the park, a character welcomes her and shows her around, and then she decides to join the Blackheart Hunters Guild. They give her 3 tasks to complete. First, she must get 3 bullseyes at the archery range. Once she succeeds, the ranger at the station stamps off her little passport. Next, she must brave the mausoleum and return with a black stone. The mausoleum is basically a little haunted house walkthrough with vampires, plague doctor looking things, and other ghouls. Finally, she has to go to the fortune tellers so they can determine the purity of her heart, there to give her a code phrase which she can take back to the hunters. When she returns to the hunters with proof of all her quests, she's inducted into the guild. So, a neat and tidy adventuring structure. I mean, it's only 3 activities once you think about it, but the tasks feel feel like some thought has gone into them. You can see that there's other entertainment like fire dancers around, and the host speculates that she's probably only scratched the surface.
I was just so overwhelmed because it feels like I only picked at one thread of the whole tapestry that there is here.
Presumably, there's so much more to do in the park. By summer of 2020, called Pyra, the tasks appear much less involved. In this video by YouTuber The Carpetbagger, he seeks to join the Blackheart Hunters, the same guild as in the BuzzFeed video, but instead of in the tavern, the hunters are standing around outside this shuttered concession stand, and they give him different tasks.
I have to give someone advice about their greatest fears. I have to get a killing shot at the archery, and then I have to solve a riddle.
After not doing well at archery, he gives up on the guild and decides to just go around interacting with characters. As he does so, we can see that in 2020, characters are doling out challenges which can be done on the spot and are mostly word-based. These guests have been tasked with thinking of 3 compliments that don't contain the letter H.
I like your hat.
Hat contains the letter H.
I like your shirt.
Shirt contains the letter H.
Not exactly a riveting challenge, or a particularly themed one. Pyra also saw the introduction of the Epics model of play. I've honestly read multiple press releases from Evermore about the Epics model.
That's true, yeah. Quests are lame, but at the same time, there's not a lot of quests you can just hand out that are safe for thousands of people. That's true. It's one of those where, like, if we sat here and thought about it long enough, there's probably something, like, something feasible. There has to be something. But I feel like maybe just, I don't know, kind of in my opinion, I feel like personally it would have been better to just do away with the quest thing altogether, rather than just give someone a compliment or whatever, you know, something just something that it's, how do I describe this in as nice a way as possible? Because something like that, like, in a place like this, like, not only is it tremendously unfun, but it's one of those things that's like, you don't feel great about it afterwards, because it's kind of like, what was even the point of that, you know? So I feel like it's better to have no feelings, because you don't do this silly, ridiculous thing, than to have negative feelings because you did the silly, ridiculous thing. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Maybe that's just me. It could entirely be just me. That seems very possible.
And I'm still only a little certain I understand what it is, which is, you know, bad from a marketing standpoint, but let me do my best, okay? Epics seem to represent a partial return to that original Evermore concept with those guided pulse productions of story along a linear path. The Epics were separate from general admission. They actually required an extra $10 ticket in order to participate. Management blocked off roughly 1/4 of the park's square footage to use for the Epics, with regular day guests barred from entry. Rather than advancing each day like the other park storylines, the Epics would reset with each group that experienced them. However, the group's choices could alter the story's outcome, so they would still have a customizable experience. After a few weeks of running a given Epic, the outcome that won the greatest number of times would become canon to the park's official storyline. This model meant that guests willing to pay a little extra would be guaranteed to see major story beats on their visit, and I assume action scenes of some kind, and they'd get to see decisions that they made make an actual impact on the storyline, at least for the night they were there. Meanwhile, to try to make up for the portion of the park that was inaccessible, they did drop the gate price, so at least it wasn't full price for a partial park. However, a lot of customers were still angry to see an upcharge for part of the park after they had already paid to get inside. And remembering my map of accessible buildings, it's worth noting that the quarter of the park that was blocked off was the most structurally complete portion of the park by a wide margin. So looking at that map, the Epics concept was actually blocking off 2 of the 5 complete structures in the park. Not to mention the most visually appealing, incomplete structures and garden walkways. Another issue is that the epics were intended for a group of about 25 guests at a time. Since story beats were seen as a group, decisions were also made as a group, meaning that guests would have less individual agency. Less assertive participants might even be left as passive observers for the entire night. From what I can tell, the epics model only ran for one season, maybe because guest response was such a mixed bag. January of 2021 saw that mass firing of the park's character department, with initial reports that characters would be eliminated altogether, followed by a clarification by the park that the characters would be returning in some capacity. So that brings us to my visit, my gameplay experience. At this point in our timeline, it's June of 2021. It's hard to explain what my experience of the gameplay was like. A quest is just a fancy word for a task. So you approach any character and ask them if they have a quest for you. Sometimes they straight up say no because the actor doesn't have any ideas. Fairly often they say, bring me gold. The thing is, you get gold by doing quests or tasks, so they're basically just shuffling you off to another actor. So if they want gold, you have to go find a second character and ask them for a quest. And you might have to repeat this a few times, go down a little chain of command, and eventually a character will give you a quest. Of the tasks characters may ask of you, I've mentally divided them into 3 handy categories. First, concrete tasks. These tasks involve a physical errand and require you to bring back tangible proof that you've done it. This would apply to every task that was asked of that BuzzFeed host. Hitting the bullseye and getting a stamp, tangible proof. Going to the crypt to retrieve a black stone, tangible proof. Visiting the fortune teller and being told a clearly pre-written code phrase to bring back to the guild. These are, in my opinion, from a gameplay perspective, the strongest tasks and should be the only kind of task in the game. Okay, secondly, we have vague tasks. These are things which are intangible, function on the honors system, and thus give very little sense of accomplishment. Sneak behind a character without them knowing for 30 seconds and then go back and say that you did that. Find out something about the rival guild, except in actuality none of the actors have consulted with each other about their secrets, and it's impossible to know whether you're just making something up off the top of your head, so you don't have to actually do it. Finally,
see, that's what those, like, they could do some of those vague tasks if they had coordinated and planned ahead. But that's a very severe if that didn't happen. Or even for the gold thing, like if they left gold just kind of lying around the park, I guess, or in certain buildings. Like a little Easter egg hunt, like literally, or something. I don't know. I feel like just spending some more time having a longer thought process about this and the quests and stuff, it could have gone a long way. Because the product they brought for the average, you know, visitor was not so swell.
Number 3, we have nonsense tasks. These are the things which a character can just make up for you to do in front of them.
It's easy to steal those props either accidentally or intentionally. Well, yeah, that's the thing. I think I don't know if she already mentioned or if it's mentioned later on, but it could just be like, you know, just these cheap little, like, tiny rocks that are spray painted gold or something. Something that's really cheap that if it's lost or if people take them, it's not a huge deal. Or, like, you know, you could even let people keep them as, like, souvenirs or whatever. Just very inexpensive things that can be readily plentiful but disposable. You know, that sort of deal. That's just the idea off the top of my head, or something like that. And like I said, I think she mentioned something, also cheatable item. That's also true, but I'm gonna be so honest and for real. If it gets to a point where someone is getting their own gold spray paint and rocks because they want to complete a quest that badly, just let them do it. It's not like they get anything of significant value. If anything, they lose out because they have to go buy their own spray paint rather than finding their own. And you know what? If anything, that saves the park money because then their real quote-unquote gold just is still there for other customers. People bring their own gold at their own cost and materials, and they still get to go along with the quest. It's a win-win for everybody. I see this as an absolute win. No problem with this whatsoever in my book. Personally. In my opinion. It's like one of those things, because, you know, unless you get, like, I don't know, first person to complete the quest gets, like, $1,000 or something, which, you know, that was never going to be a thing, then I feel like it's fairly inconsequential. I'm just realizing I've never used this little frog butterfly guy before, and looking at all the skins he has, I love him. And I feel like I'm gonna use him a whole bunch, so I'm just buying all of the skins. But yeah, so I feel like something like that could have been better. Again, it could have just taken the higher-ups just a little bit of extra thought. Do you have Plastic Duck Simulator? No, I've seen it, and it's one of those things that, like, I feel like I could potentially become a little obsessive with it, and I would prefer not to do that. Because I do have the tendency to hyperfixate on certain things. I know myself better than that. That's also why I have not bought Tamagotchi Life, despite the multiple recommendations I've had. This is just for my own well-being. I probably should not.
On the spot, which aren't difficult and fulfill no in-story role. Do a little dance, pay me 3 compliments, tell me a joke. These are awful, they offer no sense of accomplishment, and they don't even make in-universe sense as to why this character would ask you to do it. They have nothing to do with the plot, and they're too easy, even for children. These need to be eliminated at all costs. Call an all-team meeting, outlaw this kind of task. I think the only tasks of this kind which might work would be, like, reasonably challenging riddles asked by a mischievous creature. You know, they can ask different riddles to different age levels, but you should have to think about it because that's what's going to make you feel good if you get it right. So circling back to the quest system, if a quest involves going to a second location, once you've completed it, you have to wander the park aimlessly trying to find the character who gave you the quest. They might be on break and they might have wandered elsewhere because most of the characters are not location locked. If you succeed in finding them, you tell them you've completed the task, they believe you and give you a piece of gold. The pieces of gold are just little spray-painted rocks. I'm not mad about it because if they looked cool, they would be stolen. But the fact that they are just rocks that anyone could make indicates that the gold can't be that important in the story, or else dedicated players would counterfeit their own and bring it in to influence the story. But they don't because they can't, because the gold doesn't matter. Because the
basically all of the things that I said. Like I said, maybe it's just me. I feel like if someone is going to go out of their way to counterfeit theme park gold, just let them. Just let them spend their money. Save your own quote-unquote real gold. Just let them do their thing.
The system is broken because the game doesn't work. Anyway, by the time of our visit, I'm afraid that there weren't any concrete tasks left in the gameplay. There were only vague tasks and nonsense tasks. On the first day, none of the actors we approached had any quests.
Our park's gold inflation has gone through the roof. Oh no.
It's for us. We heard a lot of guests around us also asking for quests and about joining guilds, but all of the actors gave negative or cagey answers.
Is there anything that you need help with?
You know, at the moment, I don't.
Very well.
Anything at the moment.
Are you part of a guild?
See, that's what I'm talking about. Like, customers go out of their way to spend their own time and effort and money on creating these fake resources that you then profit from. Win-win all around. Oh, this guy's scary. What the shit? I think the remaining actors are of a lower grade. Yeah, I mean... so can't think on the fly. Yeah, this is... See, this is one of those things where, like, I understand some level of improv is certainly necessary, but for things that are as crucial to the gameplay element as quests, why are you not thinking about that ahead of time? That seems pretty fucking important. Because otherwise you're just sitting around doing fuck all. No offense to, like, this particular guy, or, like, the people who were less capable of coming up with quests on the fly or something. But you get what I mean? It's just one of those things that seems pretty damn crucial to the story that, again, was just overlooked. But I think at this point in the park's development, the downhill trend had sufficiently begun. And so I think that kind of did a ripple effect throughout everything else, including the actors. So...
What are guilds?
Yeah. Oh, what are guilds? They're like groups of people with similar interests?
Oh, I didn't know what.
Oh. I'm gonna go with the answer being no.
Great. It sounds like fair.
Yeah, alright, fair.
It seems to me that at the beginning of Mythos 2021, none of the actors had been instructed on quests or guilds. We did walk past this one family who I guess had been instructed to look for unsettled dirt.
So we needed to unsettled dirt.
Unsettled dirt.
Oh, they already have a quest. Clearly we're doing something wrong.
Look at him.
They have
He's
a
got
quest.
his
They said they were
own
looking for
game
unsettled
console.
dirt. I mean, that's the whole park, though.
I love this guy. How have I never used
I'm
him
still unsure as to
before?
whether this was even intended as a quest or if a character just sent them on a fool's errand. By day 2, the quests and guilds were tentatively back in the game. The quests were still stupid and vague. Pretty much every character just asked us for gold, and then the gold would be earned through nonsense tasks.
So the two cousins want us to dance for gold.
Ooh, let's dance for gold. Let's do a wee jig.
And then after we did, they gave us, like, what I felt was way too much gold. So again, I was like, the money system in this park doesn't exist. Oh, the gold doesn't mean anything. They can give you...
I don't know why this has just tickled me so. He just got his tongue attached to a spoon and he's stirring. He's helping. Don't judge him. He's helping. He's doing a good job. Nobody talk to me or my son.
You 10 gold, they can give you 1 gold. It doesn't matter. Each guild had a little home base where they set up a chalkboard with the guild requirements pre-written out. So like to join the Pirates Guild, you had to make a bet with somebody and win, make a fool of yourself in front of a crowd, and take pictures in the stocks. So, you know, you could probably get through all of that in like 20 minutes. To join the Rangers Guild, you had to get a bullseye at archery, sneak behind a character for 30 seconds without them noticing, and learn a secret about another guild. The archery station no longer has stamps, so even that has been demoted to a vague task. It's not like we were going to cheat at these challenges, because like what's even the point of that when there's no prize other than a sense of accomplishment? But knowing that lying is totally indistinguishable from succeeding is just demoralizing. Once you've done the tasks, you just walk back to the guild and go, I did it, and they're like, great, you could join the guild. That's all it takes. Also, because a lot of the tasks are made up on the fly, there's a margin for human error which can render the game unplayable. I have one moment from my visit which I feel illustrates this pretty well. We were in the Old Town section of the park when a character told my friend David to look for a man in a wide-brimmed hat in the tavern and beat him at a staring contest. If David succeeded, he could then come back to this first character and say that he won and they would give him gold. So this is again just operating on weird honor system rules where we could have just walked away for 10 minutes and then come back and been like, we won and gotten gold. But we were trying to play the game on its own terms, so we went off to the tavern.
All right, into the tavern, I guess.
Are we gonna try and win the staring contest?
Yeah, let's do it.
We spent a while circling the room, looking around, and there were no characters matching the description.
I bet that is him.
But the guy said he had a cat.
Oh. Well,
there's a portrait in the tavern of a guy with really intense eyes. So for a second we were like, is it a riddle? Is the joke that it's a painting and you can't beat the staring contest, but there's like some clue hidden around the frame? We finally just went up to the bartender and like described the character we were looking for, and she was like, oh, that's Grim. He's usually here, but he's on break. I'm not trying to get her in trouble. She didn't actually say that. She gave like an in-character explanation, but he was on break. And we didn't want to stand there for a half hour, so we were just like, okay, we're not gonna finish the quest, and we just left. I could see a few remnants around the park of items that I think used to be parts of quests and no longer are. There was this cipher disc set around. It even changed locations between day 1 and day 2. It would make sense if there were items to decode, like maybe an inscription on a stone or a scroll left on an empty surface in one of the buildings. If they had maps, they could even put a little code phrase in there, and then you would have to inquire with different characters to learn how to use the cipher or do quests to earn the knowledge. But at the time of my visit, the cipher disc served no function with any quest. It was at best a decoration, and at worst a red herring. I asked some longtime fans if it had ever served a purpose, and they said that there did used to be little scraps of paper around with phrases to decode. But apparently even then, the phrases were just like vague story teasers, like, beware the Fae King. It was nothing that had like an in-story consequence. I think the most critical failure in the Evermore gameplay is that they can't seem to find a substantial way to involve the guests. They seem to advertise an experience where the actors are NPCs in a video game and you are the hero. That's why you're paying for the experience. The employees of the park are here to facilitate your good time. But let's look at the major story events when they do happen in park. Characters are fighting and the guests are standing in a ring around the action, watching, maybe recording on their phones. When a character dies, they gasp in horror. But they have no agency in what they're watching unfold. There's this weird moment in the scene where, in a bid to involve the guests, the villain basically calls a timeout.
Town meeting, 9:30, Vander's Keep. Do not be late.
He murders 3 people in cold blood and then comes over to the crowd and is like, we will reconvene to have a town meeting about my evil reign at 9:30. It's so unnatural and not even all that exciting, but this is the fullest extent to which guests can play their part. Watching dramatic tableau and then maybe occasionally verbally weighing in. They can try to figure things out and try to tell the characters, but if their favorite character is being butchered in front of their very eyes, they can't do anything but stand there like an idiot and watch.
What is the one thing that you would want to tell someone who has no idea what Evermore is?
The only way to aptly pitch this is by asking a question that you yourself can answer. Have you ever wanted to go on an adventure with Gandalf or be sorted into a Hogwarts house?
I wouldn't say Evermore is like going on a quest with Gandalf. I would say it's more like you show up in Middle-earth and wander around making awkward small talk with the characters, and you can't fight anyone or do magic. You have little or no in-universe money, none of the characters know you well, and you can never fall in love or form deep bonds. You have to stay in one town, but also a lot of the buildings are locked or half-built, and the interiors you can visit feel unfinished. Also, instead of the interesting food you see in the movies, it's like hot dogs and nachos, and it's next door to an office park. To make matters worse, this game has a lot of artificial gatekeeping baked right into the loaf. In some ways, first-time guests are inevitably excluded from the most interesting activities. I've discovered 3 separate fan podcasts for Evermore, each representing a group of fans who go nearly every day the park is open. So these have given me better insight into what one might experience if they lived locally and were able to do that. The first component I learned about was something fans call the trading of trinkets. Basically, some of the characters carry around themed items or pieces of their costume that they can trade away to guests. Anything from a feather in their cap to a bracelet to even a dagger. This isn't promoted on any official channel, and it seems to have popped up organically in interactions between performers and fans. Super fans became really interested in this aspect of the game and started bringing things specifically for trading. Costume jewelry, spices and potion ingredients, party favors they could order in bulk from Amazon. So that's all well and good, but it's also extremely inaccessible to a one-time visitor who has no idea about that element of the game and doesn't know to shop for trinkets before they arrive. And sure, it's not a necessary part of the game, but they can observe other players doing it and feel left out. A bigger issue is that it's obvious the character performers become more familiar with regulars and choose to involve them more directly with significant story beats. One host from the World Walker Weekly podcast was tasked with finding a lockpick for the imprisoned villain of a story arc. That sounds pretty exciting, and it was a quest entrusted only to her. It makes sense why actors would favor seasoned role players who I'm sure give you a lot more to work with, but that is a level of player discrimination that you don't see happen in something like an automated video game. From a performer standpoint, it's way more rewarding and fun for you to interact with somebody who keeps coming back and learning more about your character. But from a business standpoint, you can't stay afloat with the patronage of only 50 diehard fans. You want to especially knock it out of the park with these first-timers, or else they're never going to become regulars and your park is going to die. And when I say 50 fans, that really is my best guess. Some of the fan groups I found on Facebook have 1,000 or so followers, and the most popular clip channel on YouTube, Evermore Fans, has about 3,000 views on its most popular video. But looking at the engagement on an average post, you can expect 50 or fewer people to show up. And I'm not trying to knock that following. I think it's impressive to have any kind of fandom, no matter the size. But Evermore is far from at a place financially where they can afford to languish with their existing loyal following. They need to bring more people in or they're going to die. I keep saying that. They're gonna die. The hosts of another podcast, World Talkers, were similarly invited to complete an exclusive quest. This culminated in the podcasters following characters out to the cemetery and physically digging to unearth an enchanted sword. That's, to a comical degree, way more tactile and emotionally rewarding than any other task I've heard of within the park, and it was a bespoke experience for like 3 podcasters. Supposedly, they were told that this special quest was a beta test for more elaborate quests that would be open to all, but obviously that kind of quest would never surface for the general public, because like, how could it? If you set a precedent for digging on the property to inexperienced players, you're going to have all these overzealous kids digging all over the landscaping, unearthing pipes and power cables, and here at Evermore, the only power cables we want kids playing with are the ones that we already left out in the open, lying all over the ground. So if I may, I'd love to circle back to that BuzzFeed video. I've already said that it was from 2019, so it's understandable that there are some differences in gameplay structure, but the differences don't end there. I don't mean to say that the BuzzFeed portrayal of the park was biased. They went a couple years ago and the park was run differently then. I mean, the host channel, BuzzFeed Bring Me, gets clicks specifically by presenting visually interesting activities for people to share and tag friends in on Facebook, whether they ultimately visit or not. And then of course BuzzFeed's videos are monetized, so the cooler they can make a montage of a food or destination look, the more they'll be paid for that video. But just because they have a financial incentive to present a flattering impression of something doesn't mean they would intentionally mislead their viewers. And they don't disclose in the video description whether they were comped or paid by Evermore for the feature, so I guess we can assume that they weren't. It doesn't necessarily mean anything that the CEO of Evermore set aside time to appear in their video and provided a themed filming location for the host somewhere inside of the park, and it's probably a coincidence that the locations of Evermore are shot only from flattering angles, and that interiors such as the tavern are almost empty of guests and chock full of a variety of characters whenever she enters, or that her initiation to the Hunters Guild is a personalized story event rather than this elementary school graduation my sister got when she joined the Rangers. The host takes a lot of attempts to get her 3 bullseyes at archery, and I'm curious as to whether she had to get back into a long line for every attempt, and whether she had to pay each time. I'd imagine that those obstacles would lead a lot of ordinary guests to just give up on the challenge like the carpetbagger did.
Maybe I'm not cut out to be a member of the Black Heart clan.
This one character performer seems to appear in a lot of her footage, almost as if he's personally escorting her through the park for a good long while, but I guess that could happen to anybody. Also, multiple former employees who worked this season alleged to me that all night the park had dedicated runners going ahead of the BuzzFeed crew warning actors that they were coming and to give them a good experience, but perhaps they're misremembering. But one way or another, I will say that what you see in this video seems to me to be an inauthentic Evermore experience. Maybe the crew was just lucky. I sure as hell was not hoisted onto the back of a pony and paraded through the town square. In fact, when I went, there were no ponies, which I promise I did not take personally. So I did attempt to email ahead of my visit, trying to ask basic questions about the park and inquire about renting it out. When I did that, I was intentionally vague, I didn't link my channel, and I didn't use my primary email. And I sort of suspect that if I had done the whole influencer song and dance, said my channel name, my subscriber count, I might have had better access to the park, and perhaps even a better experience. But that wasn't the point. I didn't want to call ahead. I'm the mystery diner. I'm the undercover boss. If you can't deliver an equivalently good experience for all guests, that's on you and your business. I understand that Evermore is trying to create an unusual type of experience, so they don't really have much of a template to consult. So I would just like to point to a few compelling examples they might want to consider. The first example is Omega Mart, an installation by Meow Wolf in Las Vegas. I visited—
Ben and I went there back when we lived in Arizona and actually could reasonably take a drive to Vegas. It was pretty okay. I feel like I didn't get as much out of it as I could have, because a lot of it was just kind of confusing and maybe I was just a little bit too dumb for it. Anyway.
Did it shortly before Evermore, and it was incredible. I cannot recommend it highly enough. If you're local, you have to go. It's less of a video game and more of an ARG, where most of the story is conveyed through forensic storytelling. That is, clues guests can observe in the physical surroundings. There are some interactive actors supporting the story, but the real meat of it is discovered through reading little notes on bulletin boards, dialing through phone extensions, reading brochures for tourist traps, and rifling through filing cabinets. Every aspect of the physical space is specially created to be be a part of the story, with no detail missed. I felt like I could have spent days there. I bring this up because in Evermore, I was surprised by how little anything in the sets mattered to the plot. Many of the props were real antiques, so they had no significance to the characters and weren't intended to be touched. The books weren't intended to be flipped through. There wasn't really any written word around, so nothing to dive deeper into, nothing to decode, no treasure chests, no moving or opening elements. The second example is this small Dragon Quest park. This is way more video gamey, being essentially just a walk-around RPG. Video screens throughout the park allow guests to actually have monster battles by striking action poses, and their progress is tracked on RFID chips. These same chips retain a record of what items the players have picked up, so for example, there are item chests that can only be opened if they have the right key. The only downside of this park is that when they're in the town doing character interactions or finding items, those are screens too, which feels a little sterile and not so immersive. The third example is just escape rooms. Those are huge right now, and I can't believe no elements of them were implemented in Evermore. It feels like a no-brainer. So many of them already utilize elements from adventure games with their emphasis on finding keys, solving riddles, setting items on magnetized pads to trigger effects. In a happier timeline, I can imagine a perfect marriage between all of these concepts in Evermore, where the exploring portions and action sequences would involve more video game tech, maybe even that promised integration with the Void technology. All of the sets and props would have details to explore and puzzles to solve. And then you can unlock items which can be collected digitally by tapping them or scanning a QR code. And finally, human actors would provide hints necessary to quests and make the park feel like a real town. Part 13, the attraction.
Okay, so as far as this video and co-working all that goes, we're gonna leave that there for today. I really want to play some Loop Hero. So we will come back and finish the Evermore video next time. Probably, I don't think we're going to do any co-working tomorrow. I think tomorrow's stream is just kind of happening today. Why Scary Song? No, not that one. There we go. Okay. Switching to Loop Hero. We're probably not going to play for super long. Just long enough to get some stuff done, because like I said, I have been playing off stream. And so I would like to actually make some progress.
But you can't keep doing this to yourself. She's moved on. Meanwhile, you're out there just walking the streets at night, alone, in a river of darkness.
Alright, we gotta change the street. There we go. Loop Hero. Alrighty. Shh. I hate pausing that song because it's my favorite out of all the Midnight songs. And you know what, y'all? I'm gonna be so completely and thoroughly honest right now. We did Paralives yesterday, and I was talking about like, oh yeah, I'm probably not gonna play more on stream, you know, blah blah blah. And like, I've been itching to play now, actually, which is something I wasn't expecting to happen. I want to play more. Maybe on stream. I'm not sure. Undecided. Oh, hold up. I gotta change the game capture. I don't know. We'll figure it out, maybe, eventually one day. Alright, so I did play a good bit off stream, as I said. I didn't make any story progress, made sure to avoid that. It was literally just strictly resource gathering. Okay. Sorry, getting my shit together a little bit. Alright, Shay. Alright, we have a good amount of materials. What do we want to upgrade first? Most likely, we want to start upgrading the watchtowers. would be my guess. Because we have 4 we need to upgrade. That's gonna be a lot. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, it makes the crossbowman stronger and attack range is increased by 1 tile. That is so extremely helpful. Because like I said, when we could start clustering things around the campfire and we can really just basically have a whole lot of help where we don't need to do a whole lot and like just take out some of the baddies there. That's really nice. Extremely nice, I dare say. This little tower will let us see monsters even far away from camp. But don't you worry, those beasts won't scare my men. Give me another one. Very well, very well. Quite sturdy. The tower looks even better than before. Yes, quite. I'll make a new training plan for the watchman so that he doesn't ruin the good impression. What? What do you mean by that? Okay. Oh god, we need so many more rations. Okay. That's fine, but we can go ahead and upgrade the others as well. Don't always get more dialogue, that's fine. Okay. What are we low on now? We're running low on them ration doodly dads. What is it? I can't even... Food supply! A small pack of food found in the ruins of the New World. Okay. I guess, you know, we have to feed people. Fine. Anyway, oh god. We can upgrade the cemetery? You can resurrect the hero if you upgrade it. Say less! I die a good bit. I would like to be brought back to life. I was watching the people. At first, they were lying still, then began getting up, walking, bringing coffee. Convenient. I can watch you too. You don't need to lie still. You must keep going. It's creepy as fuck. Do it again. You stand up and walk, but you're limping. Not good. The locals told me how to stop limping so much. It'll be better now. Trust me. I don't know if I do. That still weirds me out, but okay. Do we want to upgrade the healer's hut? Oh, Lago. Makes witch hut cards appear during expedition. I kind of... do I want to? Maybe. Hold on, let me, real quick, super quick. I need to just... Give me 2 seconds. I'm coming. Okay, I'm here. I had to block off the doorbell because somebody was being a brat about it and just ringing the damn doorbell for attention. You're just looking at me like, what? I didn't do nothing. It'd be... Okay. I mean, I guess while we're upgrading stuff, we might as well upgrade the healer's hut as well, I suppose. Yeah, we'll do that.
More vials means more potions. Every sip increases your chances of coming back in one piece. And bring along some more ingredients, of course.
Yes, ma'am. Alright, that's all the upgrading we can do. So... let's see how we do now.
You're right.
Put that there. I'll put that here. Put a Ruins there. Spider there, yeah. I maybe should have also checked for buildings we can build. Oh well, I'll do that at a later time when I remember. If I remember. Hi, Mago. I know, baby. You're sleepy. There's a sleepy puppy. Sorry. Got my microphone. Had to procure doggo. Okay. Oh, there we go. There. There we go. That's all well and fine. Yes. Okay. Doggo, can we settle, honey? Let's settle, baby. Hey, my boy. That's my boy. Ooh, cemetery. I'll put you there, I think. Ooh. Okay. Starting to get some better stuff. Ooh, there we go. Oh, that's not where I wanted to put that. Oops, I already fucked it. This run is ruined! Oh no! Shit balls! Go crossbow, guys! Hell yeah! Ooh. That there, that there. Okay. You know. I'll put that there. Eyelash just jumped directly into my eyeball. That's not ideal timing. Throw down some of these. And there we go. Treasury complete. Ooh. Got some good shit. Swap that out. There. I think that's good for now. Ooh, Healy ring. Yes, please. Thank you. Get some more mountains, please. Thank you. See, ask and you shall receive. I will get rid of you though, because I don't like you. I don't like the goblin camps. Oh god. Oh god. See, this is why we want to upgrade the crossbowmen as soon as possible. Oh god, because they are overpowered as fuck when you upgrade. Or we're not even done. We just gave them like a couple upgrades each. Like, oh, damn. La 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 la. Yeah, I don't like these. I guess we'll do that. Wasn't thrilled with really any of those, if I'm being honest. Go through regen. We'll go with this one. Oh, here we go. Quest failed, oh no. Whatever shall I do? Sorry, I'm a little loopy right now, if y'all could not tell. Yeah, let's go and put a vampire mansion right by our camp. What could possibly go wrong? I forget if that also spawns in vampires during the boss fight. I'm sure it'll be fine. But also, let's be real, it's not like we're gonna be making it to the boss fight anytime soon anyway. I'm getting a lot of grass and rocks. See? Hello, Grubble Dog. Congratulations on being our first beautiful bean of the day. Welcome on, and I hope you're doing so extraordinarily swell. Let's see. I think I want to go ahead and start doing like rows here. That'll be fine. Yeah. Okay. Nope. I'm good on that. Oh well, except for the Monday. That's so fair and valid. I rarely redeem anything. You know what? That's okay. Some people love to redeem stuff. Some folks don't. It's however you prefer to interact with the stream. And that is a-okay. Where do I want to put this? Here maybe? Yeah, that'll be fine. Save up for the dab. Some people are. Unfortunately, I'm dreading the day. Listen, I'm in my 30s. That's practically ancient in internet years. Someone of my age should not be dabbing. But it's there, for better or for worse. Throw that there, yeah. Maybe could overlap that a little bit. Doesn't feel like it. Should I be doing the Macarena instead? Sorry, I just like got lost in a thought spiral trying to remember if the Macarena, like how heavily it's copyrighted. I would imagine at least somewhat. Somewhat, yeah. But I have plans for if/when someone ever redeems a dab. Do trust. I've thought this through, unfortunately. You can't copyright a dance group. You can copyright the music, though. And if you're not going to play the music while you do the dance, then why even bother? Let's be so for real. Can I just bring the crossbowmen with me, like, everywhere? I wish I could. Play a knockoff sing-along version. Does Kids Bop have a version? Oh, Kids Bop is probably even more heavily copyrighted. Oh, God.
Those damn money-hungry kids.
Or something. I don't know. Yeah, we'll swap that out. I'll put that there. That there. Oh, why? Why? Why must you exist? I don't like you. I don't like the goblin caves. Y'all couldn't tell. Okay, I'm gonna possibly do a thing I maybe should not do. Having 2 active ransacked villages on the map. This could really come back to bite me in the ass. Possibly literally, because they're, you know, zombies. But we're gonna see what happens. This could either go really well or really not well. Eek. Hey, let me put that there. Ow.
Yeah, that kind of hurts a little bit. Like.
Are we? We got some decent supplies that I would really like to not lose. I mean, we're doing okay on health so far. Hopefully it stays that way. You up there. I don't know if I want to put too many ruins around because the sand snake guys are kind of nasty. Put you there? Because then with the overlapping lanterns and the goblins, maybe that's less snakes that'll show up. I don't know, man. I never have a plan for this. The whole gist is just making shit up as I go. Okay. Collecting a lot of spiders. Which I should maybe be throwing down. I'm not the biggest fan of overloading the map with any particular type of enemy, though, especially spiders. I'm not a spider fan. I don't like spiders all too much, in-game or in real life. Oh god. Oh! They're eating the dead bodies! That's right, I sometimes forget now that we're in chapter 2. Enemies get new abilities. Yeesh. Okay. Throw that there. I'll put these over here, probably. I still want to leave at least a little bit of room in case we get another treasury. I gotta pee, but I don't want to get up because Lago's sleeping in my lap. A lot of meadows. I don't want to start losing cards. So we have an Oblivion on the end there. We can afford to lose the spiders over here. Yeah, we'll go ahead and start putting down some meadows here. Okay. Oh, no! We lost an Oblivion! That's the exact thing I did not want to happen. Shit! Gotta save those! They're usually my break glass in case of emergency cards! Fuck. He'll be fine, maybe. Ooh, that does a good amount more to max HP. I feel like I can't not switch that out. The mace, I feel like we can keep a little bit longer. Throw down some meadows here. Because what I think I'm gonna do like a sandwich, if y'all haven't seen me do that before, where it's like rock, flower, flower, rock, flower, flower, you know, that sort of thing. Yeah, I should put that there. The less zombies we have to deal with, the better. Ooh. I think we'll be okay, maybe? Oh my god. Yep, get that up there. Too much extra damage to not. Oh, why? Why? Back-to-back goblin camps. Do I want to do the thing I probably should not do? Yeah, I'm gonna do the thing I probably should not do. I will live with the consequences. Or I won't, and I'll die. Yeesh. Oh, there's a treasury. There we go. Okay. You there. You there. Kinda wish I had saved more of my rocks and grass. But it's fine. It's fine. Everything is so very great and swell and oh, hello. Nope. Incorrect one. Let's, that was the wrong button. Let's try that again. Everything is so great and swell and fine. So very fine. So fine. It's okay. I'm a professional. Don't worry about it. Ooh. Those guys are scary. Have that. Yeah, that's too good to pass up. Ooh, this is also really good. I'll swap that out. Thank you. Okay. Not doing too shabby. Oh. I wish y'all would stop eating things. I don't like the sounds when they eat dead things. Okay, we're just about at top of the hour for streaming. I gotta go piss, girl, so I'm gonna take a real quick break. If y'all need to get a fresh snack or drink, whatever you need to do, now's the time to do so. I will return shortly. Y'all behave yourselves. And I'm not gonna leave it running because we're too far into the loop. Or the run. Yeah, that one. Okay. We continue. Do I want to throw down more villages? I think I might. I might need the healing, but I also want to make sure I don't overload with villages, because then that's going to make certain enemies more difficult. Ugh. Ooh. I do like that better. Oh god. So I don't really know what that sound is. Ah well. I'm sure it's not important. You know what? I think I'll put you there. Do that. Okay. Running out of places to put these. I'm pretty sure the effect doesn't stack either, which I feel like is a bit doo-doo water. That's fine, I guess. Maybe. Ooh, ow. Those guys hit really hard. Oh god. Oh. Oh. Fuck, I wasn't even paying attention. I didn't think we were even coming close. Oh, balls, man! I'm not ready for this at all. Time to kick ass. Yeah, unfortunately it's gonna be my ass that's gonna be kicked. Oh no. Ah, Jesus. Okay, and another treasury. Fuck off. Okay, okay. Let me think. Is the boss music different? This boss music is even more amped up than the first one. Oh, damn it. Okay. I don't work well under pressure. So good news, at least this particular boss doesn't spawn a bunch of palaces around. Man. I'm gonna die so fast, it's not even gonna be funny. It might be a little funny. Yeah, I'm not even gonna make it over there. Fuck off. Ooh. Does slightly less damage, but more health regen is probably good. Yeah. Am I even gonna make it over there alive? Feels like a very solid maybe. Oh god. I'll be like dripping blood by the time I get there. Sheesh. Just throwing down all the shit I can while I can. I can escape like right before the boss if I so choose. Because I'm gonna be 1000% honest. I feel like there's no way I can manage this. We're at less than half health. Fuck it, we ball. Oh god, the snakes are here! Why are the snakes here? I regret all my actions. Could you please stop? So it's you who's responsible for all this mess. Stop doing what? Stop doing all this. Resisting. Fighting for the old world. He will erase everything anyway. I'm sorry, but that's how it must go. So, a mysterious him again. It's like the fucking Powerpuff Girls him. Ooh. Anyway, I expect you're not going to explain who you're talking about, are you? Why wouldn't I? I'm talking about God. I feel like that would be my reaction too. He created myriads of stars, galaxies, and... oh, what am I saying? He created everything. And now he is destroying his creation. That's the most absurd thing I've ever heard. And trust me, I heard a lot of absurdities. Why would God want to destroy the world? That's what I would call a silly question. Do you think we have the right to discuss God's motives? Lies! Todd Howard would never destroy anything. That's so real and true. He's God, for God's sake. If he decided, it has to be done. It means there is a reason and a meaning to it. Instead of all your rage and anger, you ought to thank him for the life you've had and spend the time that's left to bid the universe goodbye. No! Wait! That's not right! If all that is true, then why am I still able to resist? Why am I able to restore this world piece by piece? It's very slow, but I'm still able to do it. Does that mean your God is having second thoughts? Is he a god at all if I can go against his will? These are just empty words. You're simply trying to find a reason to say your unimportant no. I feel sorry for you and this world, but your efforts are in vain. You can't stop the harvesting scythe of God with a single blade of grass. I shall end you personally, by word or by force, if need be. Well, maybe a blade of grass won't stop a scythe. I got a whole lot of fucking fields up in here, what do you mean? But it can get into your shoe and hurt like... You know what, metaphors are really not my thing. Let's see how well your God can protect you. Well, let's see. This is the priestess. Summons an angel instead of an attack that disappears after dealing 2 attacks. Creates 5 stained glass windows instead of every second attack. Has 20% chance to be protected by one of the windows. 60% chance to be protected by a stained glass window. And we got the goddamn snakes here. Oh no. I am in trouble. Oh god, with the fucking angel, invincible, cannot be targeted. But for why?
I'm in danger.
Okay, so no more of the ruins next to the camp. Got it. Yeah, this is real bad news bears. Oh, and I revive! Still not gonna do a goddamn thing, most likely. Blech. Yeah, right. Well, we did our best. What we can do, though, is we can go into our supply. We've been collecting items that we can bring with us, kind of, in a sense. All these items do different stats. So it's sort of like more cards that we need to figure out what we want to do some strategizing, and just try to figure out how the hell we're gonna do this shit. Here's increased by 5%. When within range of a road lantern or a beacon, effects don't stack. Heals 5 HP every time a new item is equipped. I don't know how I feel about that. Ooh, more damage against rat wolves. Ooh! Garlic gives us more damage to vampires! I mean, that tracks. Okay, I think maybe we want some cheese. Perchance. I like cheese. Preserve pebble while passing through the campfire tile. I feel like that's probably good. Just give me like a few stools. I'm going to be thoroughly seated, ready. Increase by 5%. I think I like that. Maybe. -4 damage from all vampires from a silver pendant. Ooh. Direct a storm temple lightning bolt or any pure damage attack into a random enemy. We don't deal with storm temple lightning bolts, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't even remember what that is. Additionally heals 15 HP when hero passes the campfire down. Effects don't stack. Okay. So we shouldn't put 2. That. Cheesy garlic. Lovely. More cheese. I mean, I guess we might as well put... Oh. Well. I think that's at the max of what we can do for right now. Maybe we'll actually take that down, put that there. Okay, so I think that's the maximum number of items we can currently take. I'm sure with more upgrades, we can increase that. Ooh, we can upgrade the canteen. 6% a hero can rest before fighting. I can't even speak. Yes, give me, please. Thank you. Ah, my kitchen keeps getting better. Here's a new recipe for you. Cut some chicken into cubes, then fry it with soy sauce and 2 spoonfuls of honey. Oh God, I'm so hungry. Don't do this to me. I usually add some sesame seeds, but that verges on haute cuisine. Hot? Listen, I was an English major, but I still can't pronounce words for shit. Can we build anything useful? Perchance? Necromancer. Ooh, plus 10 to the camp's item limit. I do like more stuff. Stuff is nice. I kind of want this, though. Provides the basic warrior gear at the start of each expedition. Let me think. You know, I think I will build the warehouse. And we will put that here, because that's literally the only place we can store it. Totally. Yeah, okay. And just look at us. Yesterday we had no idea how to get by, and already we need more space to store all our belongings. I always knew that human greed would outlive an apocalypse. So true, babes. Warehouse. Wait, hold up. There it is. Okay, sorry. That would have been funnier if I'd been quicker on the draw with that bit. Okay, let me see. Oh. These I don't think we have access to yet. That I think is a material we get in Chapter 3. Blah, blah, blah. These we can get. It's just a lot. Okay, so the warehouse cannot be upgraded. Gotcha. We can build another one. I mean, we can't right now because we don't have the materials, but theoretically, we can build another one. If we're able to, though? Because that was the only spot we could actually put a warehouse. Oh no! Can I not actually build a second warehouse? Well, I will. Anyway, I think perchance that might actually do it for me today. I know we literally only did the one singular loop. But, you know, we did some co-working at the beginning of stream. We decorated for Pride Month, and I got some shit I gotta do. Phone calls and appointments I gotta make. Which I should probably go ahead and get all that over with. So, no stream tomorrow, methinks. But we should hopefully, like I said, the schedule is a bit fluid these days. Hopefully be back on Wednesday with some more Claire Obscure Expedition 33, if that's your jam. And if y'all like some Loop Hero, we will be back with some more of that on Friday. So that'll do it for me. I appreciate y'all so very much for hanging out with me. Don't forget to join the Discord if you have not already. Follow me on socials. And I hope y'all have an absolutely wonderful rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening, whatever time it may be for you. And until next time, I will see you folks later. Bye-bye!